Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we're talking the 1985 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Geraldine Page won for her performance in The Trip to Bountiful. But why did she beat fellow nominees Anne Bancroft, Whoopi Goldberg, Jessica Lange, and Meryl Streep? We'll explore all this and more today on And the Runner-Up Is. Hello and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, here to talk about the 58th year of Best Actress at the Oscars, which covered the films of 1985. We'll be discussing how Geraldine Page won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today is a real favorite. She's been on this show quite a few times now, including on a Best Actress episode where we covered the nominees of 1936, where Louise Reiner won her first Oscar. Now she's back nearly 50 years later, in film time at least. Creator of the amazing YouTube channel Be Kind Rewind, co-host of the Izzy and Murtada Picture Show podcast. Welcome back, Izzy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, to cover a very, very interesting year with a lot of different narratives going on, I think.
Definitely. And I can be less of a hater this year than I was in 1936.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm curious if we'll have any here that we don't quite like this time. Mm-hmm. I don't know your opinion on some of these, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yes. Well, before we talk 1985, let's talk Best Actress as a category. So last time, I asked you to give me your favorite Best Actress win of all time. You said Liza Minnelli in Cabaret. Mm-hmm. I assume that's still the case. I don't know.
Sure. I feel like it changes every day, but that's a solid answer.
Yeah,
I can't ever be like, no. Yeah, I love that.
Actually, I've changed my mind on Liza. No. So I will ask you for an alternate question. What would you say is your most favorite Best Actress lineup of all time?
Oh my gosh. What is the one in 1970 something where it's like Jenna Rollins in A Woman Under the Influence and
74.
A bunch of other ones. 1974. Let me Google this really quickly. I just remember that one being like wild.
Yeah. We got Ellen Burstyn was the winner of that one for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Yes.
We had Diane Carroll and Claudine.
Yeah.
Faye Dunaway, Chinatown.
I think that's probably it. Just because I'm pretty sure all of those were just like bangers to me. I really like Lenny. I was actually thinking about Lenny earlier today because Nico has that song about Lenny Bruce. And I was listening to it and I was like, oh, wow, Bob Fosse doesn't miss, huh? Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to go with 74, like 75, however people choose to decide, whatever.
Yes, I'm one of those film year person, not ceremony year, but it's, that's a really, really excellent year. I highly enjoyed doing that episode last season. Highly recommend people check out that episode. We had a lot of fun breaking down, especially Jenna Rollins. That, could require its own podcast into itself.
Yeah, it's an all-timer for sure.
Yes. Well, my other question for you, you said on that first episode that your most heartbreaking loss in this category was keeping it in the family, Judy Garland in A Star is Born. So now I'll ask you, what is your most heartbreaking snub overall in this category?
That's really hard. I'll just go kind of vintage. I mean, this would probably never happen, but like the idea of Deborah Kerr getting another nomination / loss for Black Narcissus would have been sick. Or anyone from that movie, really, because it's so good. But yeah, that's a shame to me. But there are so many. I mean, that's that's why, like, yeah. Oh God, I could go off on that for a long time.
I'm sure. Yes. And you could even just add more Deborah Carr performances, including The
Exactly.
Innocents and Tea and Sympathy. And there's just, yeah, all of
I
the,
know. Yeah, you're
you
right.
could fill out a whole other 6 films that she could have been nominated for in addition to what she did get nominated for.
Exactly. Or it's like I would just trade them for, like, I don't
Right.
know. Some
Or
of the
that.
ones she got nominated for, I was like, all right, but whatever.
Choices
all
were
good.
made. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. I know you're a Deborah Carr girl, so I had a feeling you might choose her. So
I know. I'm getting really predictable, I think.
it's okay.
Unfortunately.
Well, let's talk about this year at the Oscars, the 58th Academy Awards. The nominees were Anne Bancroft in Agnes of God, Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple, Jessica Lange in Sweet Dreams, Geraldine Page in The Trip to Bountiful, and Meryl Streep in Out of Africa, with the winner being Miss Geraldine Page. So before we break down these performances, Izzy, what are your overall thoughts on this lineup?
I don't think it's a terrible lineup. I mean, I really generally like all of these actors. So it's like one of those things where I'm always excited to see these women nominated. I'm not necessarily enthusiastic about a lot of these films, not in like a terribly negative way, but maybe just like a underwhelmed kind of way.
Yeah.
So in general, it's like, okay, yay, we're talking about Jessica Lange, but it's, Sweet Dreams.
But to what end?
So,
Right.
yeah, it's exactly. It's sort of like generally fine. Not my favorites from really any of these women, but not mad about it either. Would love to have seen Cher nominated. That's a snub for you for Mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
But alas.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? How do you feel generally?
Well, I think this is a super interesting year to talk about because it is one of those years like in this category where people sort of look back on it and they criticize the Academy for, Whoopi Goldberg, who has such an iconic performance in The Color Purple, her not winning.
Yep.
But I think within the context of 1985, 1986, it does make a lot of sense that Geraldine Page does win for reasons that we'll get into. But overall, I think it's a lineup with sort of that dynamic that I always love to talk about, which is past, present, future of this category.
Totally.
Anne Bancroft and Geraldine Page getting their final Oscar nominations here after very strong runs. Jessica Lange and Meryl Streep are just like the contemporary 80s queen favorites. And Whoopi is really kind of representing like the future in a way, getting in for her film debut and kicking off this long storied EGOT career. I think also worth noting here that everyone here is an Academy Award winner, with Whoopi winning just a few years later for Ghost. So like everyone here is widely celebrated. Everyone is taken care of in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. With the exception of Whoopi, it's just kind of like, oh, another one for everyone else,
Yes, another one for the tally.
Yeah.
Right. But of course, different for Geraldine Page. But still.
Of course.
What we think of these performances from all these icons, I think personally some of them, not their best, but in other cases, I would say near the top or the top. So I'm very ready to get into this if you are.
Let's dive in.
All right. Well, let's start first with Miss Anne Bancroft for Agnes of God. So Anne Bancroft here getting her 5th and final Oscar nomination. Her last one that we talked about was The Turning Point in 1977. So this is 8 years later. And we're also 23 years removed from her first nomination and win for The Miracle Worker. So that's quite an impressive longevity. Very similar to her Turning Point co-star, Shirley MacLaine, in that sense, just getting in for different decades. So after The Turning Point, Anne Bancroft actually makes her directorial debut with Fatso in 1980, one of the rare Best Actress nominees or winners to have, made a directorial effort by this point. She's in David Lynch's The Elephant Man. She's in comedies like To Be or Not to Be, Garbo Talks, both of which she got good notices for, even if the films themselves were mixed. I think she had a lot of respect by this point in her career and was just very active in sort of chasing roles that she wanted, including this one in Agnes of God. So this was originally a stage show. Geraldine Page actually played the role and got a Tony nomination for it for the Broadway production. And then Anne Bancroft really, really pursued this film adaptation to play this character. According to Norman Jewison, the director, he said that she told him, "I'm married to a director. I know that none of you know how to make up your minds. I'm going to help you with this decision." And so he said that he didn't really want to cast her first, thinking of her just as like, oh, you're Mrs. Robinson. That's what I know you as. So she really just took matters into her own hands and, you know, was just like, so this is Mrs. Robinson. Look at these lines. Look at me. So she really like took off the makeup and just proved that she could do this. I love that. It kind of brings me back to those like old Hollywood actresses like Irene Dunne or like Bette Davis, Olivia de Havilland, who really, really fight for their roles and took real agency with it. So yes, Agnes of God. It's about a novice nun, Sister Agnes, played by Meg Tilly, who is accused of killing a baby that was found in a basket in her room. And so there's this psychiatrist, Dr. Martha Livingston, played by Jane Fonda, who is assigned to make sure she's stable enough to stand trial. And she discovers that this is a much more complicated story than she anticipated, with Agnes seeming very naive when it comes to sex and procreation and being very devout and pure. So she uses some hypnosis to get some information out of Agnes. Meanwhile, Martha also has to contend with the Mother Superior here, Mother Miriam Ruth, played by Anne Bancroft, who's very protective of Agnes and suspicious of Martha, and is hoping to sort of protect Agnes and her purity. So let's talk Anne Bancroft here and her final nomination. Izzy, what are your thoughts on the great Anne Bancroft overall and her performance here?
I love Anne Bancroft. It's funny that Norman Jewison said that, because I do feel like so much of her early work, especially her stage work, is like very pared back. Like I feel like Mrs. Robinson is almost kind of the outlier in a way.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I agree.
But I do feel like Anne Bancroft is one of those people who has tons of awards and people list all the time as kind of, you know, being a very good actress or whatever. But I still feel like she's underrated somehow. Like, yeah. I just feel like she goes under the radar a lot. I love her in this film, and I also really like this movie, which is, it's like very ridiculous, and it's not fantastical, that's not the right word, but it's a little unbelievable. It's not very realistic, you know, like the hypnosis and the stigmata and all of these things that are just kind of like, I don't know, an X-Files episode, but like,
yes, very interesting tone here.
Totally.
You know?
Totally. Yeah. But I just love to see women going full actress, and that's really what this is. This is, I also think, kind of an underrated performance for Jane Fonda, because this is kind of in the vein of her, it's not necessarily as political, but it's kind of in the vein of her like China syndrome reporter, like I'm gonna figure this out if it's the last thing I do kind of thing, which I love when she does that. I think she's so thrilling in that way. But yeah, I love to see Anne Bancroft able to like showcase her aggressiveness, I guess, like, or kind of be a villain, because so often she's really not, or she's kind of a sympathetic, well, maybe, I guess it depends, but she could do everything. And
yeah, I like she has the range.
Yeah, I like that she's allowed to kind of just be a liar and be mean and be like yell at these women and like kind of be self-serving in a way. But yes, that's how I see her in this film, and I really love it.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really nice ending to the Anne Bancroft experience, if you will. I don't think it really quite matches some of those first few nominations she got with like Miracle Worker, Pumpkin Eater, Graduate. That's just like an incredible run there. For me, this is a little more in like turning point bucket, a little bit of nomination that she gets slightly later in her career that's maybe not quite up to her earlier work, but still, proof that her natural instincts are so on point. And she's playing like, the typical mother superior here. And I love how she is kind of, I feel like, slightly altering her voice to give her like that sort of northern type of, like, not necessarily New England, but folksy Canadian-ish. But it's also not super exaggerated to the point of like, this isn't like Fargo sort of thing. So I was actually surprised when she did open her mouth for the first time, just how much it felt like a departure from how she would normally sound. I don't know. But I think she also really inhabits like that tough exterior and like her protectiveness that really lends itself to the story, really. I think there's a version of this that's like super broad and hamming it up in a way that some would argue like Meryl Streep kind of does in Doubt, maybe. I don't know how you feel about that performance, but that's just like really in your face kind of acting. I think she's a little more restrained here, but she has the look down. There's the sternness in her face that really says mother superior. You see her really trying to like control the narrative here when she is first meeting with Martha and like answering her questions, but kind of like trying to get through it in a way, and is very confident, so she doesn't show any kind of like weakness or insecurity or anything. She just kind of wants to get this done and get it over with. So she's like, I don't see what the purpose of this is. Like, what does the identity of the father have to do with any of this? And she's just like very quick and dismissive. And also, I would say pretty intimidating despite her kind of like frail-ish frame.
Yeah.
She literally says, I wrote this down, I know what you are, in a derogatory way.
Oh my God. Yeah.
About her whole profession of psychiatry. I enjoyed that.
I also think, one of the things I love about Anne Bancroft is she never really feels exaggerated unless it's on purpose. Like, she can't accidentally overact. She's kind of like incapable of doing that.
That's true.
And so what I like about this too is that the physicality that acting forces when you're wearing a habit, like it's a bulky garment. You can't do a lot of like posture work. Like it's going to like kind of force you into doing certain things with your body. And so what you do with your face is really important. And I think she is so good at that. And it's so controlled and like purposeful with everything that she does. Yeah. So I just think it's a really good testament to that, because she is a really physical actress in, like, for example, The Miracle Worker, obviously, or or even in, some of the comedies that she does with Mel Brooks. It's like all of that has a very physical element to it. So the fact that she can kind of not use her body really is impressive.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, there's only so much you can do, but it's very similar to that Katharine Hepburn kind of Lion in Winter, like working with the wimple and just trying to serve face, as it were, through all of that.
Mother, as they say.
I mean, yeah, let's be honest.
Literally mother.
Also, just want to note her sort of Latin chants, I think, are quite convincing. Again, like, I do really just believe her in this role. And I love the scene where she's admitting that she was married for years and she has 2 children who won't see her anymore. And she makes this kind of like,
why?
Yeah, right. And she has like this kind of self-pitying comment almost about how like that's just their revenge for me being a failure as a mother, and that they probably tell their friends that I'm dead and all that. And those are just very revealing moments where you see that little glimpse into some of the pain maybe that this woman is just like trying her damnedest to suppress, but it sort of comes out in these moments when she gets carried away with like what's really going on. So I love those
just
little moments.
Like this, if a part of your life has already fallen apart, the incentive to like keep everything together and like give this veneer of perfection is so much stronger. So it's kind of like, oh, I see what you're doing here,
Right. Oh yeah, definitely.
I know what you are.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
And we of course get the revelation that she is actually the aunt of Agnes, which was a pretty important detail that she just happened to withhold from Martha, and she just plays it off like, where she's like, whatever, I didn't think it was important, which just sort of makes her look even shadier, obviously.
Yeah.
And when Martha tells her that like Agnes's mother probably molested her, she has this kind of big over the top reaction of being like, I didn't know, which part of me
did.
by that point, I'm like, you have to be hiding more here, because like it is so over the top, and I know Anne Bancroft has stronger instincts than to just play that as like, oh, that's the surface level genuine reaction, you know?
And I do think, like, I don't know, coming from a Catholic background, one thing I just appreciate about all of this is like, that is kind of my experience, where there's always like something else going on. Like nobody's like saying the straightforward correct thing at first at church, in my experience. So I think
I don't think you're alone there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't know, I think probably any movie that kind of paints the secrets and the politics of church like that is probably something that I'm going to be like interested in naturally.
Yeah, for sure. I love also when she kind of deflects by dismissing Martha as being like, oh, you're just like a jilted ex-Catholic and you're kind of like on a crusade. And she's like, I can smell an ex-Catholic a mile away.
Exactly. Well, maybe she would smell me. Ew, that's a weird sentence to say, but you know what I mean.
Anyway. Yeah, but the whole thing of like her opening up to Martha about having doubts, speaking of doubt, religiously speaking, you know, and how like when Agnes would sing, she would believe again. That whole thing I find very interesting. And she still has like that frankness that she's had up to this point, but is really starting to peel back the layers here and starting to joke around even with Martha about like wondering if the old saints smoked back in the day and like what would be like their pleasure sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you thought of that scene, the dynamics there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like the layers that she's bringing to it are so interesting, because it's kind of like on one level, she kind of despises this woman because she doesn't share her beliefs, because she won't leave her alone, because like she's threatening to reveal things about her leadership that maybe aren't so savory. But like there's also a part of her that kind of, I think, misses life before the convent, I guess, or like maybe like finds it a relief to like relate to this woman in a way that maybe she can't relate to the other nuns. Does that make sense? Like, so I mean, obviously a lot of that is like a credit to the writing and stuff, but I just really enjoy when we're able to kind of feel more from a character than just like she's a pure villain, she can't do anything, you know, she's whatever. So yeah, I think Anne Bancroft is really to thank for that kind of thing.
Right. And again, she's too smart to just play it in that two-dimensional way.
Exactly,
yeah. And I think there you also see some of that like great Anne Bancroft charm coming back, and as they're like
her first scene when she comes in and she's like, Dr. Livingston, I presume. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Like she's so corny, and she's so like you can kind of just read on her face like the fact that she's being so nice is just an act. Like there's just some kind of weird vibe about it that is completely unspoken. And I mean, I guess that would be obvious from you're kind of expecting that going in if you know what the movie's about. But yeah, I just thought she did that really well too.
Yes. Some of that old charm coming back, and how they're starting to sort of bridge the gap between them in a way that does feel genuine. Yeah. Even though it is ultimately sort of short-lived. And then after which point, you know, she starts to be like, I don't want you involved in this anymore. Yeah. And I think from there, she sort of tapers off a little in terms of importance in the narrative, which is sort of where we get into a boring Oscar discussion of, is she lead here?
Well, I meant to bring this up because I was like, I don't see her as a lead in this, really. But I don't know. What was your read on it?
I sort of think it's like a three-hander kind of film ultimately, and is sort of, as strange as it sounds, sort of like The Favorite in that respect, where it is sort of just about these three women who sort of come in and out, and like you can sort of justify all of them being lead but also all of them being supporting, so it's just like kind of arbitrary ultimately. But I definitely would agree with you that
Yeah.
of the three, she seems like the most supporting personally, and that Meg
Yeah.
Tilly, the titular Agnes, just has a lot more importance obviously to the story. You couldn't do the story without her.
Mhm.
And for me has slightly more impact even than Anne Bancroft in what
Mhm.
she's able to do. I don't know what your
Yeah.
take is on Meg Tilly's performance, but
I think this is the only thing I've ever seen Meg Tilly in.
yeah, she hasn't done a lot, to be
Yeah.
fair, but
Or was she
yeah.
in never mind. I'm just gonna butcher the potential title of this, so I'll just put it all good.
Well, prior to this, she was in The Big Chill. I think
That's what I'm thinking of.
okay.
I was trying to think of I was like, there's like he's running in it. I don't know why that was the first thing I remembered from that. Anyway, I'm slowly losing my memory. I feel like I have to say this every 3 seconds because I'm just forgetting the titles of things so easily now. Cross
okay.
30 and it's just bad news, guys.
You don't have to tell me. Yeah. That's why I have to write a lot of notes just to make sure I got everything.
Anyway, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that, but that's probably where I hit my limit with Meg Tilly.
Sure. And again, she didn't have a super extensive career, but still.
Yes. She does have a YouTube channel, though. Did you know that?
I don't think I did.
Yeah, because she's
with her sister? Or just
no,
herself?
But Jennifer does occasionally appear. But she
that.
mostly talks about her books. She's an author now. And then she'll like occasionally like tell stories about when she was an actress and like being married to Colin Firth and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure that's interesting.
Yeah, it was for like 2 seconds and then I got tired,
Fair enough. All right. Well, yeah. So anyway, really, again, strong final note to end on with Anne Bancroft. No real complaints about it other than, I guess, just is she in the right category? And ultimately, does that really matter? I don't really know. Probably not. I think she's fine here.
Would you have rather seen Meg Tilly? Would you have rather seen Meg Tilly if you had the choice?
Maybe. In lead. Yeah. She isn't supporting, but I might have preferred that they switch personally.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd probably keep Anne just because I like her better as an actress. Pure bias. That's all I'm saying.
That's what the Academy does all the time. So
Exactly.
Yeah. So again, really strong final note for Anne. Do you have anything else before we move on to our next nominee?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covered everything.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's move on to our next nominee, a very big one here, Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple.
Ooh, getting right into it.
Yeah, really. This is, by contrast, I think, a big one.
Yeah.
Whoopi Goldberg, the great, multi-talented Whoopi Goldberg, EGOT winner Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple, and this is our only new nominee in this category this year, and only the 5th Black woman to earn a Best Actress nomination after Dorothy Dandridge, Diana Ross, Cicely Tyson, and Diahann Carroll. So this is actually the first since Diahann Carroll 11 years ago, so that's not great, and she's going to be the only one of the 80s. Until Angela Bassett in 1993 will be the next one. But to give some background on Whoopi Goldberg, she was born in New York City. She found her way through theater troupes, and she studied under Uta Hagen at HV Studio, and she did a one-woman show as the comedian Moms Mabley. Then she did another one-woman show, which caught the attention of Mike Nichols, who helped to launch the show on Broadway, where she was then discovered by Steven Spielberg, who then thought that she had the right spirit to play Celie in The Color Purple, which is adapted from the Alice Walker Pulitzer Prize-winning book. And Spielberg said he basically wouldn't do the film if Whoopi was not playing Celie. And it was a big gamble because Whoopi had only been in one super small, obscure film before this. So for all intents and purposes, this was her mainstream feature film debut. And carrying the weight of a book and a character that was very important to people who read the book. So The Color Purple tells the story of Celie, a young woman living in the Deep South in the early 20th century, who was raped by her father, resulting in 2 children who were taken away from her. And she's also separated from her sister, Nettie, with Celia arranged to marry a man named Mister, who constantly abuses her. But as the years go on, she starts to build up her self-confidence, thanks in part to Sophia, a very self-confident woman who marries Mr.'s son Harpo, as well as Shug Avery, a showgirl who was also Mr.'s mistress at one point. And both of them helped to sort of gain self-confidence of her own while she is secretly hoping for the return of her sister. So let's talk Whoopi. Thoughts on the iconic Whoopi Goldberg and her legendary turn here in The Color Purple?
I think it's hard to talk about Whoopi in 2023 because I feel like she's just been stuck on The View for like 20 years or something.
Yes, literally. I know.
And so it's kind of like, I just think it's hard to put yourself in a context where it isn't her yelling that there aren't enough, like, or that there are too many bike lanes in New York City. And it's just like, truly, this woman is actually one of the great artists of like the past 50 years.
Right.
And that's great. Like that, I wish she had an opportunity to kind of like still explore that. Because it does kind of suck a little bit. And I just feel like this performance is excellent, and probably doesn't get talked about as much as it should, kind of because of a lot of that now. Like, the Whoopi discourse is so different and kind of like divorced from that. I remember watching her comedy special when I was doing the video for this, and just the way that she builds her characters and embodies them so fully is just so impressive. It's absolutely like not distinct to me, like from a person that you'd be like, oh, this person has been training in dramatic work their entire lives. You know, it's like just because she was kind of associated with more comedic work before The Color Purple, it's like It was still so fully embodied that I can definitely see why Steven Spielberg was like, I definitely need her. I need her for this. So yeah, I mean, I think like this is really one of the big losses that stands out in like multiple ways, obviously, which I'm sure we'll get into. But to me, it's just like such a shame that this probably her best performance, I would say, in her career, that she wasn't rewarded for that, because it's wonderful. And I don't know what else to say. I think she's so good.
Yeah, we'll get into the many layers of the performance for sure.
Yeah.
Whoopi is one of those actresses, comedians, personalities, whatever you want to call her at this point, because she, again, has gone into so many different avenues. Where I just sort of love how unmistakably herself she is. Like, there's no one quite like Whoopi, and she's really charted her own path in so many ways, and she has such a bold personality. I recognize that sometimes she does have some pretty wild comments, especially through her time on The View, as you said, where I'm just like, where did that even come from? But she is so true to herself, and I do respect that. But it's like she's so known for that kind of extroverted, active kind of personality, which is what makes this performance so compelling, to see that personality so withdrawn into herself for like most of the runtime here, I would say. And yeah, I just find this to be one of the best sort of Stars Born debut performances that maybe there's ever been. Like, she has such phenomenal instincts for someone who's just starting out in her film career, just like totally her own person. And as odd as the comparison may be, it reminds me of Barbra Streisand in her debut in Funny Girl. Like, not necessarily in performance style, obviously, because they're like diametrically opposed, but in the sense that like Whoopi is so unique in her voice, in how she expresses herself, and is also new to the film world, but already kind of feels fully formed and just like in command of her own strengths and her weaknesses, just like Barbara.
Yeah, it's kind of like she's coming in to shake everything up.
Yeah.
You know, she's going to kind of, I think like you said, like there's a tenor to Whoopi Goldberg's comedy that feels much more like late 80s, early 90s than like early 80s. You know what I mean? And I feel like she kind of comes in and is able to kind of help force that shift. And it's like a shame too. Like I think that's a pretty that's a really good comparison. And I think what's like even sadder about it is that like Hollywood wasn't really able to figure out how to like use her the same way they could figure out Barbara, you know?
Yeah.
And so like it's crazy to me that she did what she did in that movie. Like you're right, she totally shrinks herself down, which is like the last thing you think about when you think about Whoopi Goldberg. And like she's never in another movie really like that.
Yeah.
Ever again. That's so crazy. That's
it's
so
like
crazy.
all comedy after that.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But I think The Color Purple as a story with this book and this adaptation it's one that I just find very moving and very sincere, honestly, in its intentions. And I think this does pretty well in execution. Sometimes I think the movie does tread into some classic sort of Spielberg sentiment that he's been accused of, but I think Whoopi just cuts through to something deeper for me, something that is very deeply felt and raw, and I think she's such a perfect vessel for Alice Walker's words because she carries that meekness and the shyness of Celie so well that you can't help but feel for her, and yet you also are seeing this incredible inner strength that she has with having to withstand all of this abuse and to carry just the weight of that for all those years and to still be dealing with it now. You know, Alice Walker has said that like Whoopi has this indomitable quality and how she couldn't imagine the character of Celie being down without having a sharp opinion about it. And I think she's exactly right. I feel like you understand through these little glances and how like her sort of shifting her responses when she wants to say something, maybe just how smart she is, how there's so much potential in her to eventually drum up the courage to leave this man, but it's like she needs the tools and kind of the freedom to do so. I think she does all of that without making Celie feel sort of pathetic or feeling like she's condescending to the character.
Yeah, and I do think she does a really good job like with her scene partners, because I mean it's also like Oprah Winfrey's debut too.
Right.
So the idea of like these two, I mean, I think obviously Whoopi had a lot more experience with her than her as a performer, but like the two of them kind of stepping into this new situation and lifting each other up, I think you can kind of read in the film a little bit.
Yeah. Good point.
And her relationship with Shug Avery, I think, is really nice. Like, obviously, it's kind of toned down from what it could be, I guess, in the book. But there's just such an authentic connection between them that you believe that this woman has kind of changed her perspective on who she is. And credit to Whoopi Goldberg for making that feel really real and intense.
Yeah, absolutely. And another interesting scene for me is when Harpo asks Celie for advice, and she doesn't have the words for it at first, but she just kind of blurts out, beat her, like beat Sophia.
Yeah.
And her meekness as she says that is so heartbreaking because it's obviously like the only thing she knows. Mm-hmm. It's what she's been raised to think of when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
You know?
And what a good mistake, not a good mistake, but like a useful mistake to make, like the way that like the consequences kind of spill out from that are so vital to like helping her understand how she's being treated.
Yeah. Like when Mr. gets the mail and she asks, anything come for me? Or like when Shug arrives and sort of calls him Albert, which Celie has apparently never known his first name. And she is like later has to like help him to try to find the cooking supplies to cook for Shug. And she just kind of quietly says to herself, Albert. And she has like this little amused smile. Just these very small, simple moments. But there's just a sincerity, I think, in her line delivery and her desperation to just sort of get by and to be okay and to find these little tiny moments of happiness whenever she can. Because it doesn't happen a lot, which I think that really just endears you to her.
Yeah. I hadn't seen this recently. Like I hadn't seen it since I saw the musical, I think.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So like it was interesting going back and watching this again and being like, and no song. You know what I mean?
Right.
I guess the first time I saw it, I didn't think of it like naturally as a musical, but I think something about it, like that musical is written in a way that I think really emphasizes her shift to like growing into her adulthood, I guess, or like becoming a fully realized human being in her own eyes. And I was just like, oh, I miss the songs, and it made me really excited for the new one.
Yes. So again, a very relevant film to be watching for this year because it's coming out as of this recording in 2 months.
Which is crazy because I feel like I've seen nothing about it.
Yeah, and also like have critics even seen it? I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of. I have no clue.
Yeah. So strange, but
yep.
Excited to see that interpretation. But yeah, the whole thing with Shug is so interesting and such a major part of her performance, her sexual awakening, sort of, and her having this kind of role model. And you see her, how much more comfortable she is in her presence. She's obviously a little intimidated at first, but there's just like this intimacy, like especially in the bathtub scene when she's brushing her hair, or sort of like looking so dreamy-eyed at her when Shug is singing at the bar, and like covering up her smile with her hands when Shug is singing Miss Seeley's Blues. Like, it's just this very open-hearted, genuine love that she has that she never gets to express otherwise. And she kind of gets to receive some love, which again, never happens.
Yeah,
elsewhere.
it's like Sophia's nice to her sometimes. but Shug is physically touches her and doesn't harm her. And I feel like that is a groundbreaking revelation, that you can touch another person without it like hurting you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love also when they're, of course, back at the house, and Shug is convincing her to put on her little showgirl dress, and she kind of coaxes the smile out of her, and her laughter and her smile is just so joyful and so infectious. So, yeah, when you see them kissing, and she sort of flinches at first because the idea of any kind of physical interaction for her is so often associated with violence, and just like not focusing on her needs at all. It's very revealing. But when she sort of turns her head to kind of offer herself up to be kissed by Shug, such a lovely moment.
Ugh. Good movie. Good movie.
Yeah. I think it holds up, personally.
Yep.
You know, I understand the criticisms.
Oh, me too, for sure.
Yeah. And I also think this is an example of a passive character who things are happening to more than she's driving the action, can still be compelling, you know, and have us understand her emotional journey and how she's feeling about all these different people in her life, as opposed to a similar nominee who we will get to later on, who is also somewhat passive, but I don't find to be very easily accessible personally. Preview of coming attractions there. But for Whoopi though, I just find her like, I don't know, even though she's always kind of receiving things around her more than actively driving things, I always understand what she's thinking. And I think that's a superpower that Whoopi has.
Yeah, it really is. I'm trying to think how that might relate. I feel like comedic actors are sometimes the best dramatic actors as well, because they're just really good at listening. I think or like there's something about comedy that requires a level of empathy that maybe drama isn't necessarily quite as like obvious, you know. And yeah, I don't know, I mean, I'm just trying to like grasp for like, how is she so good in this? Like that's why maybe there's some,
it's an X factor.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, the scene where she reads the letter from Nettie, having gone all that time thinking that she had just lost contact with her, that's genuinely touching. And her voice and how it starts to sort of tremble reading those words from her sister, recognizing that like not only is she alive, but also her children are being taken care of, and just the sense of relief that she has that just washes over her. Again, she just plays it with so much sincerity. And I can imagine it was difficult to sort of communicate those sincere emotions without it feeling insincere or like overly sentimental. But it feels so live and in the moment, like it's her first time reacting to this. And I think that is what like the power of acting could be, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's hard to do that, especially when it's a screenplay like as unrelenting as this one is, because it's pretty
Right.
much just like, I mean, the first 3/4 of it are just horrible.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of everything has to feel like fresh and new. Like you can't just be like, oh, she must have been tired at this point.
Right.
Which is I imagine that must have been really, really difficult to do and like perform and feel like ready to embody that every day.
Yeah, I think she just understood the importance of this character, again, to the readers of The Color Purple, and just like what this character means and represents to so many people, that she always just gave it that sense of responsibility, really. Obviously, the table scene is her big moment where she confronts Mr. about taking her sister away from her, and is kind of like having this newfound confidence and speaking with pride about, you know, my children are living in Africa and learning different languages, and feeling like, you know what, I do have people out there who love me, who appreciate me for who I am, so I'm not going to take this shit anymore, basically.
Yeah.
And she's just speaking with that full Whoopi Goldberg voice at this point, which just makes her confidence in leaving him so satisfying. It's like all the control he's had her under for all those years is finally gone, and she's ready to just like step into her power here. And when she's threatening him with the knife about like withholding the letters, you would not blame her at all if she just like went ahead and did the deed, even though people try to prevent her from doing that.
Yeah. I think the way that Spielberg shoots her in that scene is really, really clever too. Because I think it kind of starts like below her a little bit, if I'm remembering correctly. But then, yeah, you're kind of like, she becomes like a bigger figure through his direction. I think that's really clever and interesting, like a nice touch.
Yeah, I completely agree. And of course, the moment where she gets into the car and her kind of like cursing him and saying, everything you've done to me, already done to you. I think there's, again, a risk with moments like that, too, where it could be too overplayed, but she gets it just right, and especially when she says, I'm poor, black, and I may even be ugly, but dear God, I'm here, which is, of course, the I'm here moment of the musical.
Yeah, like, and cue it.
Right? Yeah. Obviously, that's a big, empowering, kind of iconic line, but she says it with this just naturalism at the same time that makes it feel like it's really coming from her rather than just feeling like a line to get applause, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the final scene where she, you know, puts those glasses on and she sees her sister for the first time, and all those decades later, calling each other's names, running out to greet each other, and meeting her children who are all grown. I think that's just a transcendent moment, and I think the film does earn that moment.
Absolutely. It's so triumphant. And you're just, I mean, after everything that's happened, you're like, thank God something turned around for this woman.
Yeah, I know. It only took, I don't know how many
Her
decades
whole
by
life.
that point.
Yeah.
She's an old woman by the end. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, she finally got to that place. And so it is just such an emotional journey to go on with this character that part of me is surprised that even with the narrative that Geraldine Page had, that voters couldn't give it to her. Like, it's just
Well, it's not only that, it's like that plus it didn't win anything.
Didn't win anything.
Nothing. Out I mean, obviously 11 nominations is really good, but I don't think it's not like this was a huge year. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there aren't a lot of standout hits from 1985. Five. So it's kind of like, what's going on? Like, what? Oh, Reed's a little
it's
bad.
Suspicious.
Yeah, definitely. Something going on that we don't like.
Yeah, they decided to go all in on the other sweeping epic.
Yes.
To be continued.
Yeah. Coming attractions, as you would say.
Yes. This is an incredible, emotional, beautiful performance, and I think it is one that still holds up and will endure outside of the context of awards even. You know, I think it's just one of those iconic performances that will stand the test of time.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
So, any other thoughts on Whoopi before we move on? Sad that this is the only time we'll get to talk about her on the lead, obviously.
I know, yeah. Well, maybe
category.
like, I don't know. You're doing supporting too, right? So it's like,
no, I'm not.
well, I'm just saying that, like, hoping to plant a seed.
So you're manifesting. Okay.
Yes.
I see.
So
you're trying to incept me here.
Yeah. So then, like,
fair.
50 episodes later,
right.
we can talk about Ghost and it'll be great.
Yes. Fair enough. All right. Well, let's move on to our next nominee, Jessica Lange in Sweet Dreams. So Jessica Lange is continuing her incredible run in the early to mid 80s. This is now her 4th film in a row that gets an Oscar nomination for her, starting with Frances and Tootsie in 82, Country in 84, and now Sweet Dreams in 85. Must have been a wild ride for Jessica to be kind of like emerging from the bad reviews of King Kong to then having this incredible 1982, winning an Oscar, and just continuing to get nominations every year, already on her 4th nomination here. But yeah, to get into Sweet Dreams, as you might imagine, the idea for a biopic about Patsy Cline originated from the success of Coal Miner's Daughter, which featured Beverly D'Angelo in a supporting role as Patsy Cline. Maybe it would have been fun to see her carry it over to leading this film and make it a true, like, music biopic cinematic universe here. But Jessica Lange is sent the script, even though Meryl Streep apparently really wanted to play Patsy, which was a rare moment of Meryl being turned down for a role.
Man,
sorry,
I didn't
Meryl.
know that. That's wild.
Yes, but Jessica saw it as this opportunity to continue in this area that she really liked exploring at this time, which was telling stories about rural America, small town America, that sort of thing, which she did with Country. And Sweet Dreams is told essentially from the angle of Patsy Cline's relationship with her husband, Charlie Dick. What a name. Charlie Dick, played by Ed Harris, and sort of charting her rise to fame, but mostly centering on that relationship and him physically abusing her, fighting over infidelity, and other fun difficulties that come up between them, leading to her untimely death at the age of 30 in a plane crash. So let's talk Jessica Lange. Izzy, thoughts on Miss Lange and her biopic performance, your favorite genre?
My favorite.
Mm-hmm. Don't we love it?
I really like Jessica Lange. I do not like this movie.
Great.
I was very bored by this movie, which sucks because I really like Patsy Cline.
Yeah.
And
beautiful voice.
Yes, beautiful voice. I also think like it's just a little baffling to me to cast Jessica Lange. I'm glad that she lip syncs in this film.
Yeah.
Thank God. Although she is not a very good lip syncer. I think we need to acknowledge this.
Not great.
She's not great at it. It's not like she's off or anything. She's not doing like a Susan Hayward, but it just looks like she's lip syncing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, but I guess like I think Coal Miner's Daughter, if you have to kind of compare the two, which you don't have to necessarily, but I'm going to, I think Coal Miner's Daughter tells a better like complete story of a marriage. Like the hard thing about Patsy Cline is it's good, bad, and then she dies. Like it is really abrupt, and you just kind of aren't really satisfied with anything in the end. And I'm very sorry for Miss Cline, but it's not like the easiest of biopics, I guess.
Yeah. I'm also just curious what you think of the angle of this to just center so much of it on this
on her marriage,
toxic sort of relationship. Yeah. Rather than really a lot to do with her actual professional career.
I know. Yeah, it's really tough. I feel like that must have been, it was such a trend at the time. I don't know enough about country music to like understand how Patsy Cline like fits into the genre and like what she might have offered that was very specific and unique or revolutionary. But I would have loved to find out in this movie if there was something nice. Aside from her just having the voice of an angel. So yeah, I mean, I guess it is really disappointing when you put it that way.
Yeah. This is also the return of my director nemesis, Carol Rice.
Mm.
Um, this is the last time I'll be talking about one of his films. Sweet Dreams, I think, is definitely a more standard biopic than his other movies that I've talked about with him, like Morgan, Isadora, French Lieutenant's Woman. But I still found it to be not on my wavelength, not my cup of tea.
I didn't
as
like
Spike Lee would
Isadora
say.
either.
Exactly.
Oh my
So
God.
there you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But having said that, I think Jessica Lange is pretty good here. I think this feels like her most significant sort of transformation, maybe, thus far, of her nominations, at least. You can definitely hear her trying to modify her voice, her speaking voice, to have that more like, I don't know what it is, contralto tone in her speaking. I just made that up. I don't know if that's actually what it is. But
it sounded
compared to what she
convincing.
normally
It
has,
sounded
which is like,
convincing.
okay, thank you. But like, I think she's trying to match Patsy's singing voice, right? Which I think actually does sometimes work well to really immerse you in it, even if you know consciously that Jessica is not singing this, very obviously.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can really tell when someone is lip syncing compared to their actual speaking voice, and it's just like two totally different things. And for me, I do think she does a decent job, at least, of matching that, personally. She also has an interesting quote from an interview where she said, "I played so many parts in which everything is hidden or rumbling underneath, but Patsy had a way of hitting life head on. There was nothing neurotic about her, nothing overly complicated." So I think that's kind of what makes this performance feel like a departure, you know, in the sense that like she's not really playing a lot of layers. She's just kind of a character who is just like living in the moment and just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, just is very instinctual and not really having a lot of like internal struggle of like, do I say something? That sort of thing. She isn't doing the thing like she would do in Frances
Sure,
of being
yeah.
like very studied and just like lost in her thoughts. She's just like saying whatever is on her mind. And so there's like ultimately not a lot of subtext to what she's saying.
I think it's interesting that she's really fascinated. She plays a lot of Southern women.
She does.
Which is so interesting to me because where is she from? Minnesota?
Yeah.
And then and then I think of her as like moving to like New York and then Paris and stuff, and she's just like, I'm gonna sit in the South and act the hell out of these women.
Yeah. I know.
Which is so interesting. Like I'm curious if she's ever said anything about that, because I don't think I've ever read anything about it specifically other than what you kind of just mentioned.
Yeah, the whole interest in rural America sort of thing.
Right. But yes, I do think it's like a little bit more straightforward, but it's also, I feel like there's something about it being so grounded in like a marriage as opposed to maybe like Frances or Tootsie, which are kind of like playing with things like outside of these personal relationships. Like those are more like sociological than this one is, I think, a little bit.
For sure.
And so maybe there are more like ideas to kind of play with in those that feel a little bit more sophisticated. Like this is very straightforward. Bad marriage. She doesn't like it, but maybe she's famous. Like, yeah. So
what if a famous lady had a bad marriage?
I know, shocking. But yeah, maybe that's why I'm just not as like attracted to it, because it's not like there's like it's not presented in a unique way. And by this point, we've seen 100 of these movies where it's just kind of like, yeah, of course, like, yeah, of course he was mean. And it gets
couldn't
really
handle
repetitive.
His wife having more success than he does.
Yeah, exactly. It gets very repetitive, especially rewatching some of these. Like, it's too much.
It's just a lot of her, again, living in the present, going on instinct. And I do think it does suit her vibe generally of being that instinctual live wire actress. But over time, it just becomes kind of redundant what she's doing. I don't know if that's more of a criticism of the film than her performance. But I think that's kind of like what is sacrificed when it comes to her quote about being like, you know, she's not overly complicated. That like, we're not having many deeper layers as the film is going on.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, she's doing the same thing. She's lip syncing. She's fighting with her husband. Endless cycle. So it doesn't really go anywhere for me, I guess.
Totally.
Problem.
And I think like it kind of doesn't help Jessica Lange either. Like, if we're talking about Anne Bancroft, how I was saying earlier that it's kind of impossible for her to accidentally like slip into exaggeration.
Right.
With Jessica Lange, it's kind of the opposite. Like, she can very easily
Yeah.
kind of slip into that territory. And so sometimes, like, if the script isn't there, like, I think this happens in Blue Sky too, where it just kind of,
Yeah, big time.
like, all of a sudden you're like on 11 and you're just like, how did we get here? This is crazy. And so if the script isn't like sophisticated enough to handle that, then it can become really tiring.
I totally agree. And when they get married, like, her trying to get him to say that she loves him at one point, which he does, but it takes him a bit to really say it and seem like he means it. You see, even though, you know, her smiling and she's really trying to like make this sort of fairy tale romance almost, but he's just so remote even from the beginning, and obviously temperamental.
Mm-hmm.
We get the standard argument scene where she's been slaving over a hot stove while he didn't call to say that he's coming home. So the dinner's cold, food is thrown, plates are smashed. It's just very cliche stuff.
Totally.
And of course, it's on the same night of her getting the call about her record being on the charts. So they kiss and make up. Again, nothing too surprising, but I think she does tap into that like impulsive, immature side of Patsy with like a conviction and a drama of, like you're saying, going to 11 when she needs to be, that is being asked of her. So again, it's like, I don't know whether to blame her or just
well,
how
it's
she was
also the
directed.
director, right? Like, yeah.
Yes,
I just
I think so.
if your director is kind of inclined to do that, which I think he was a little bit based on his other films, I don't think he's very interested in like subtlety, so you're not going to get that really.
Yeah, and even like when he does start to abuse her physically and she confronts him about how like he had promised earlier in their marriage that he would protect her. Having watched Coal Miner's Daughter pretty recently, for me, it's almost the exact same conversation and scene as we get in that film when like Tommy Lee Jones abuses Sissy Spacek as Loretta Lynn and on their wedding night. And I'm just like, this feels like the exact same dynamic, just in a different skin.
Literally, yeah. It kind of feels like if you're going to make this movie after Coal Miner's Daughter, it has to like purposely hit different notes. Like, I'm thinking of the way that Elvis and Priscilla feel very different, even though they're like kind of telling similar stories. There's just like a kind of like a different purpose to it. And obviously these are different women, but like if you want to make them feel like distinct human beings, they can't hit the same plot points. Cause like I'm sure a lot of the like skeleton of those stories is similar, but they can't be, they're not the same person.
Yeah, I know. So
I don't know.
And she ends up having their baby while he's out being tempted to cheat on her, of course. I do love hearing her call him a son of a bitch. It reminds me of what Louis Vertel was saying on when we talked about They Shoot Horses, Don't They? When we were talking about Jane Fonda and how like Jane Fonda is like the essential person you want to say son of a bitch on film.
Oh God, yeah.
And like Jessica Lange is different in the way that she expresses that. There's a little more like a fury to what Jessica Lange brings to it than Jane, who can just be kind of like disdainful, that sort of thing. But still, he is a son of a bitch. So
That he is.
I mean, yeah, Ed Harris knew how to play him and still does.
True.
Son of a bitches.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, as the film goes on, I do just get so frustrated with how somehow it feels both formulaic and also shapeless at the same time. Like, I don't know how this happened, but it feels like we don't really get a strong sense of like what inspires her to be a musician, that like this is her calling. She does have like general life experience that she can bring to her music, but like the music part of it kind of feels incidental to me.
Yeah.
Like she's just this fully formed singer at the start of the film, even though she hasn't had her big break yet. There's like one scene maybe where she's talking with a music producer and she says she wants to be like Hank Williams to have like the emotional effect on people, but it doesn't really go any deeper than that. So
I feel like Coal Miner's Daughter is more successful at that.
It really is.
Building out her life. Did this get other nominations? Do you know?
Sweet Dreams?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, well,
this was
there
it.
you go.
Yeah. Actually, I can give you a fun trivia fact here
Sure.
that I just found out. After her nominations for Frances and Tootsie, every single one of Jessica Lange's other nominations, she was the sole nominee for her film.
That is really funny.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a little shady.
Country, Sweet Dreams, yeah, Music Box, Blue Sky, only one.
Wow.
Yep.
What, she's doing Long Day's Journey into Night now?
Yes. With Ed Harris.
Yep. So there you go.
Isn't that interesting?
Maybe that'll be the one. Break the streak.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know if I can handle Jessica Lange and Ed Harris arguing again, but that's fine.
Did you see it on stage when she did it?
No, I did not. Did you?
Yeah. It is a long day's journey into night.
Lives up to the title.
Yeah, but she was very good, so I'm excited to see
I'm sure.
how she translates it.
Yes. So, yeah, it's not a great film. I don't have too much more to say about it other than what I've already said, just because it is so repetitive. It doesn't get any deeper than that. And her lip syncing, I don't think it's bad. I mean, that's as best as I could say about it. But like when she is singing Sweet Dreams, the titular song, I do think that is the most effective performance scene for me in the film. And it does also weirdly create this effect of like impending doom, because that comes very late in the film. So I guess I appreciate that aspect of it.
Here's something I will say, though. I'm happy that this was made before there was like this prosthetics obsession.
Oh,
because she does not look like Patsy Cline at all.
No, not at all.
And
no.
Great. Okay. It doesn't matter. We're good.
Yeah.
Didn't affect me as a viewer at all. And also like she didn't get to hide behind anything.
Right. That's a really good point, honestly.
So
yeah,
I just think like let's stop with that. Maybe.
Yep. Yep. I would agree. And then, spoilers for real life, the plane crash happens, even though it's not exactly how it happened in real life. She doesn't crash into a mountain. I don't know where that was. I don't know how that was devised, but I think didn't she crash into like a forest? Something like that?
Idea.
I know that
how
the
did the
ending
plane
is
go
disputed.
down? I don't remember.
So
no, I'm on Wikipedia now because I want to know how she died.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally in the Wikipedia page for this movie that, like, the ending is inaccurate.
Fantastic.
And also her mother, Patsy Cline's mother, did not like this film.
Oh, that's really sad, actually.
Yeah.
But also, okay, here's something that I'm really interested in, because sometimes I think it's really nice to make a film with the involvement of the people who it's about, right? And then other times I'm just like, maybe your approval kind of made this worse, or like made it
sanitized it.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, maybe this didn't affect anything at all, but that's just something I've been thinking about recently.
Yeah, I'm not sure how involved the family was with this, but again,
Cline possessed a contralto voice. Look at that.
Hey, wow.
You did it.
Wow, I didn't even look that up ahead of time. Good for me. Wow. Okay.
You did a great job.
Thanks so much. I don't really have much else on this, unless you do.
No.
I think we're tapped out.
I'm not very enthusiastic about this one.
No, and it's a shame because I love Jessica, but this was not one of her better nominations, unfortunately.
No.
I did listen to my fair share of Patsy Cline after I watched this movie because I'm like, she's a great singer, and I just like hearing her on her own rather than in the movie form. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I love it when movies do that for you. I watched the Todd Haynes Velvet Underground documentary last night, and that's like all I've been listening to since then.
Love that.
But yeah,
anyway,
there you go.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our final losing nominee. Who else but Meryl Streep in Out of Africa? Okay, so Meryl Streep is now on her 6th Oscar nomination in 8 years. If it wasn't already clear that she was here to stay, it was now. And here she is, having already been in 2 Best Picture winners, and now fully leading a Best Picture winner here with Out of Africa. Fun trivia fact for you, another one. This is the last time that she was nominated for a film that was also nominated for Best Picture until The Post, over 30 years later.
That is surprising. Wow.
I know. So, of course, Meryl is very much in demand after all the success that she's had, even at this early stage in her career. But she is also still having to prove herself in certain areas, including as a romantic lead, which is what this role in Out of Africa kind of requires. So there were plenty of names bandied around for this role, like Audrey Hepburn, Judy Davis, Julie Christie, Jane Seymour, kind of like of many different generations. So interesting there. But Meryl heard something to the effect of the director, Sidney Pollack, not thinking she was sexy enough for the role. So she showed up to a meeting with him in a low-cut shirt and a padded bra to show that she was capable of being sexy. So
that's all you have to do, ladies.
I guess so. Lesson learned. Yep. So Out of Africa is based on the memoirs of Karen Blixen, a Danish woman who experienced life in Africa for a time. And we see how she gets into a marriage of convenience with a baron, and they move to British East Africa, where they end up building a coffee farm, which she's mostly tasked with running, while the baron is off doing little baron things. And we also go through the First World War during that time, and she's also having this off and on relationship with a big game hunter, Dennis, played by Robert Redford, and it's kind of just this episodic journey through her years in Africa as she's trying to figure out who she is, what she wants, who she wants, and just further developing as a person. So let's talk Miss Meryl. Izzy, I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on Meryl Streep, just in general, and her performance here in Out of Africa.
Where to begin? I really like Meryl Streep. I'm not like she's not my favorite, but not because I don't think she's talented. I just I don't connect with a lot of her films.
Right.
Just like out of a like personal taste kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very good example of that. I don't like this movie very much. I think it's very boring. And it's weird because it is kind of the kind of film that I think if it had been made in a truncated version in like 1935, I would be like, this is so good. But like in 1985, I'm just kind of not as enthusiastic about it. It's very dry. The politics of it are like pretty infuriating and like I mean,
a whole other issue.
Yeah, it's like kind of hard to get into, obviously, but it's just like very uncomfortable. I personally don't think she has a lot of chemistry with Robert Redford, but I don't know if that's I don't know if that's like a hot take, but I don't necessarily. I think Robert Redford has better chemistry with like dudes.
Now we said it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Him and Paul Newman.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like he's I prefer him in like a buddy genre, or maybe with Jane Fonda, but anyway. Yes. So this movie is hard for me, and I don't like revisiting it because it's also really long. So it demands a lot of time. No. I'm sorry for making it sound like I was complaining, but yeah, it's like it's not my favorite. It's definitely in the like not bottom of the barrel, but it's toward the bottom of my Meryl Streep list.
Wow.
Is that like crazy?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, this is a performance that I think is solid, but not entirely successful even for me. It kind of falls into the territory of The French Lieutenant's Woman, where I really find myself kind of searching for meaning in what Meryl is doing with the role and finding that I'm not always entirely sure. And sometimes, obviously, that can be compelling as a viewer when a performance has like these interesting contradictions to it and you don't quite have a feel for what the character is and it's changing as the film goes on. But what I find with this one is that kind of searching nature of the role makes it feel less confident to me as a viewer, if that makes sense. And I think a great deal of the problem has to do with just this movie, which I understand is beloved by some, and I want to sort of respect that, but I just find it to be tremendously dull, to be quite honest, through long stretches of the film. If it works for you, that's great. I'm happy for you. I've read some interesting dissenting opinions about why people have a fondness for it, And to be fair, like the technical craft, I get it. The cinematography is beautiful. John Barry's score is excellent, especially the main theme. But like on a story level, I just don't have any emotional investment in this. And I do think it would have helped. It would have helped if the central performance was more dynamic, dare I say.
Well, I think there's kind of maybe a useful contrast to bring up between like Whoopi and Meryl's performances here, because
yes,
like
which
there's
is what I was alluding to before.
Yeah, like there's such a timidity to Meryl in this that I think like she kind of also has to like blossom out of, or like learn how to like control her life more specifically in a way that she wants, but it's like just not as interesting. And there's like
it's not.
The way that Whoopi is able to kind of shrink herself is just so much more believable than it is with Meryl's. And maybe it's just because she's playing like I think Europeans from this era have kind of an icy reserve to them that if you're going to play that, it's just kind of going to inevitably come off like very uncharismatic on purpose. But it's also kind of boring to watch that.
It is. Yeah, it really is. I find her to be very recessive to the point that I don't really have any emotion one way or another when she's making certain choices, when she's having her affair with Dennis, like when she's fighting with the Baron, even like when the farm burns down later on. I just find myself at such a remove. And I don't think it's an unsuccessful performance per se. Like, she is committing to that accent for dear life. But I sort of get like the bones of what she's going for. Like, she wants to be a more active participant in the world and all that. I think that's like a solid through line, but I can just never get a handle on who this woman is. That's my issue.
Yeah, and it's also kind of I think it's really surprising, and maybe there's some kind of disconnect there where Norman Jewison was saying like, oh, I want this woman to be like really sexy and like you're not hot enough for this role. And it's like, what about this role is like that sexy? Do you know what I mean? Like, she's literally in like buttoned up dresses for 99% of this movie.
She does have that hair washing scene.
Sure. But I'm just kind of like, what, like, where is it? You know, like, I don't know. I just feel like who this woman is, as you said, is not exactly defined. Maybe.
Yeah. I think, she does inhabit that kind of sensibility well in a lot of her roles, the impetuousness and the idea of being underestimated, but secretly having like this intelligence or a wit or like a boldness in her personality. Not that I think of Karen as bold by any means, but I think she does sort of fit in the archetype here of that like beautiful period romantic drama heroine who is like underestimated for her intelligence and sort of beguiling in her own way and dealing with a total drip of a husband and having her little romance with this roguish character of Robert Redford. Like, it's a very standard setup what the dynamics are here. And I guess in that respect, she does know what the kind of film she's in, but like there's something in the execution that feels like we're not really turning on the gas enough.
I think what's maybe missing is like, I think the things, or I should say the things that resonate with me the most about Meryl Streep performances is when she's allowed to be fun.
Yeah.
She's much more interesting. And I think like she is really specific about her choices when she's playing a character that's like a little spunky and like weird. And this woman is like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like the choices are so subtle that they're indiscernible and maybe not specific enough.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, even in those what should be bigger moments, like when she realizes that like she has syphilis, which she got from her husband, and she realizes from the doctor that it had to be from her husband, who must have been maybe fooling around with another woman. That's kind of the implication. I think moments like that are when I wish she could inject a little more energy into showing just how it is she feels about that. And she may feel different things about it, maybe, but again, I just kind of struggle to access what she's feeling.
Maybe she and Jessica Lange should have switched roles, because Jessica Lange would have taken it there, I think.
That is an excellent proposition. That should have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, why not?
Then Jessica would definitely have other nominations than just the one. Yeah, the romance with Robert Redford, I think, is inconsistent for me. I do enjoy like the New Year's Eve scene that they have where he's kind of prodding her and they're kind of like doing the classic sparring romantic partners thing.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, we have the hair washing scene, which I do think is decently erotic in a movie that's not really very erotic, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But it's so much of a slow burn, their relationship. When we get to the point of them finally like consummating,
yeah,
I'm just like kind of unmoved ultimately, because like so many of their conversations that they have are so repetitive and dull, and
it's like explaining a joke.
Yeah,
kind of. It's like it's not funny once you've explained it. It's kind of like it's not hot when we like know that, like you've been talking about this forever.
Yeah, again, like a lot of this could actually be interesting, like conceptually, which is a similar complaint I had with The French Lieutenant's Woman. But in execution, it doesn't feel to me like there's a lot of confidence behind the camera or in the script to find the right angle for it, I guess.
Yeah.
So we're kind of just left with empty images. Pretty images, great score, but it all kind of feels like dress up after a while.
Right, exactly. I'm realizing I think I said Norman Jewison earlier and I meant Sidney Pollack, but it's fine. Everybody knows what I mean.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. No, you're good.
Yeah.
I like
I agree,
the scene in the air. The airplane scene is nice.
Sure. I like animals. I don't like big game hunting, but I like animals.
Yeah.
Those are great.
And apparently Meryl did her own stunt there when she's doing like the whipping of the lion.
Wow.
So she insisted upon doing her own stunts.
Good for her. Why not?
To what end? I don't know, but good for her.
It really added a layer of authenticity, if I do say so myself.
Well, there you have it.
I don't know. I just made that up.
So yeah, I wish I could sort of dig deeper and explore what she's doing, because there's something there. I'm sure she found something to latch herself onto. I just don't think it really shows itself in the final product. She says, actually, there was a quote where she was actually nervous at first when she saw a first screening of it, that like the audience would not be here for this movie. She was very nervous that it wouldn't work for people, and
I guess I'm like both. So. I'm both surprised and not surprised that it did as well as it did.
Yeah,
because there were a lot of these coming out, but it's just kind of like, I think the 80s are a huge blind spot for me in this sense, because there's so many of these movies that are just extremely well regarded at the time that I just do not connect with at all. And I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah. You know, like the poem at the funeral at the end is poignantly portrayed. I think it would be probably devastating if I had a personal investment in the relationship by the end. But a solid closing note.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think Meryl Streep's ever going to give a performance that is like genuinely bad.
Right.
But I guess there are performances that are so good that the expectation is so high that you're also just like, when something feels a little underwhelming or like you can't latch onto it, then you're just kind of like a little sad, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. So we love you, Meryl, overall, but this is not one of the performances that I would go back to personally.
Yeah. And we know that's how I feel.
All right, shall we move on to our winner?
Miss Geraldine.
Yes, Miss Page. Here we go. All right. Geraldine Page and the trip to Bountiful. What a trip it is. So, yeah, finally winning her Oscar after 7 losses. She's the first actor or actress who had to endure 7 losses before finally winning on the 8th one. Paul Newman and Al Pacino would go on to have similar trajectories, but it really is very rare. We last talked about her with her performance in Interiors, which I think is fantastic work from her. But after Interiors, she gets another supporting actress nomination in 1984 for The Pope of Greenwich Village. And by this point, she has 4 supporting nominations, and this marks her 4th lead nomination. So there's some nice poetry there, I suppose. The trip to Bountiful gives her a huge opportunity to fully lead her film from start to finish, and it's based on the play of the same name, which was staged way back in the 50s with Lillian Gish, written by Horton Foote. So The Trip to Bountiful is set in the 40s, and it's about an elderly woman, Mrs. Watts, played by Geraldine, who is living mostly unhappily with her son and daughter-in-law, and she is desperate to return to her hometown of Bountiful. But her son keeps advising against it, knowing that the town is probably gone now, but she is stubborn and decides to run away and gets on a bus that would take her close to where she remembers Bountiful being. So the film is essentially about her journey there and her conversations with the people that she meets along the way. So let's talk our winner here. As we know, F. Marie Abraham proclaimed her at the Oscars to be the greatest actress in the history of the English language. So do you agree, Izzy, about that? And what do you think of her performance here?
No, I
Wow.
don't agree. No offense.
You disagree
no
with
offense,
Mr. Abraham.
F. Marie Abraham, but I don't think that she is. But that's not to say that she isn't great. Geraldine Page is kind of one of those people that I'm like, I should be really into you, but I don't care. And I feel really bad saying that, but like I've just never been like, I'm so pumped to watch a Geraldine Page movie tonight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Old Jerry.
Yeah. So I think with that said, I almost never am like disappointed by a performance though. Do you know what I mean? Like they all kind of do it for me, but I'm not, Googling it and like posting it on Tumblr
Fan
or whatever.
cams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the reason that I really like her in this film is that I think she kind of is one of the best at holding these, like, you can see this character kind of like actively repressing her emotions or like trying to convince herself of things. And Geraldine Page is really good at that kind of 2 things at the same time kind of thought process that a lot of her characters have. So, she's riding on the bus and she feels very like delusional, but also seems to like sort of secretly know that something's up, like something's changed, like I'm getting older, like things aren't great, but it's fine, actually I'm gonna go back to my hometown and my friend is there, but actually I haven't seen her in a long time. There are all these conflicting things happening at once, and I like how she handles that. But again, like this is another one of those films where I'm just kind of like, it's fine. I don't love it. I never really return to it on purpose. And yes, it makes me happy that she finally won one. I don't think it's her best performance, and I don't think the film is that interesting. And I always confuse it with Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, hard not to. Same era too.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of like, all right, that's fine, I guess, but it's a little sad in the context of Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is really good work from her. It's obviously one of those films that is entirely focused on her performance, because honestly, I don't really think the film has a lot going for it outside of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she is able to do a lot, honestly, I think, with this role. She's charming, she's annoying at certain parts, she's heartbreaking at other parts, and she just kind of carries this experience on her shoulders and in her face. And I think she's able to transcend like what could be a very standard little old lady type of character, like a Helen Hayes in Airport is sort of that sort of thing, but is getting at something very affecting, which is this desire to reconnect with her roots and just like having that urgency to get back to that place that she looks back on, certainly with rose-colored glasses, but I think it's a very real feeling I would say, even from like her first conversation at home with her son, and she's having like a sleepless night, and she has this sprightly kind of charm that establishes that she has kind of like an independent streak. And I think she also has this way of tossing off certain lines in those long monologues about the past, and
Yes.
to make the sort of theatrical nature of it feel real and natural and not like theater, you know?
Yes.
And so, it's like she also has this disappointment when she's talking about not remembering certain memories of the past, and those moments where she kind of slips into like a confusion almost, and being scared of that, I think is well observed, honestly. I think that's something that a lot of people of older generations and, other generations that are younger even have experienced, that kind of feeling of being disappointed that you are not remembering certain things, or that you can't go back to a certain time in your life. It may be rose-colored glasses ultimately, but you just want to escape the present. I think she taps into that really well.
Yeah, and to give credit where it's due, I feel like this is one of the films that does that best. I feel like there's occasionally, like every couple of years, there's like a role for an old person who's like either has Alzheimer's or dementia, or is dealing with some kind of like memory issue, like myself. And and sometimes they just don't feel like, they feel very sensationalized, and I do think that this is definitely not that. Maybe like the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. For better and for worse, it is
exactly.
very, very low key.
Yeah, exactly. It is a lot of sitting.
It sure is. A lot of sitting, a lot of talking.
Yeah. And I don't think like the supporting characters are that compelling either, which kind of, I think, makes it harder.
Yeah. Can we talk about that daughter-in-law who is just the most cartoonishly awful woman who just won't stop pestering
that's
her?
the thing, is like all of them are kind of cartoonish.
Yeah.
Except for her, but maybe even her a little bit. I don't know.
At times, yeah. I mean, I enjoy the kind of her moment of busting out, I think, is a fun moment, like her kind of like faking this sinking spell to get her daughter-in-law to leave. I love how she kind of plays it ambiguously at first. Like, you don't know if she's actually experiencing this sort of episode or if she's pulling off a ruse, basically. But she has those little mischievous glances as it goes on. I mean, it's kind of like sitcom-y stuff in the beginning, but there's just a thoughtfulness, I think, even in those smaller scenes, that I do enjoy, and that you are on her side throughout.
She can be very fun. Like, she's jokey. She
playful.
Wants people to like her, which I like. Especially when she meets strangers. The way she interacts with people for the first time is always really funny and kind of like innocent and naive.
Yeah. I like when she has this kind of youthful sort of exuberance once she is on the train or the bus. I mean, even as she's just like looking out the window, it's just like she hasn't gone to do something for herself in so long. And now she's finally sort of satisfying this urge that she's had for years. But yeah, her sort of chatting with the Rebecca De Mornay character on the bus is more of that just wall of text in the script.
Truly.
That she makes feel very improvised to me, like telling those kind of meandering stories as she's trying to also keeping up that cheerful spirit, even while she's talking about very hard things, like some of the deaths in her family. I think her best moment is this really nice monologue about how like she never actually loved her husband and feeling like life maybe punished her in a way and caused her unhappiness because of that, and how she only ever loved this other guy in town, but she could never marry him because their fathers didn't get along. And it's just like this heaviness that washes over her that we haven't seen from this character up to this point. And she's kind of like almost reliving the past in real time.
I like that she can also do that silently though too, because like when she actually goes back to her like farm or whatever, she really is taking in the reality of the situation in a way where you're like, oh man, her mind must be going a mile a minute. Like she's just out of words at this point. And yeah, I mean, so I do think the payoff of the film is really good in that sense. Like it really makes that moment impactful.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you can also see the method actor in her really kind of accessing those past memories that are very personal to her. You know, that's exactly what this character requires, is to always be thinking about those past memories. So in that way, it's like a very method friendly kind of performance.
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess.
that's a good point. I never thought of that. That's really clever.
Yeah. So, you know, when she does get to Bountiful, of course, she's finding that it has all but disappeared. And she's grateful to be there, but it's like she also has this moment of disappointment, for as kind of irrational as it is, when she says that she was almost expecting her mother and father to come out and greet her.
Yeah.
Which just kind of crystallizes that whole idea of like, she just wanted to go home again and be in that sort of, you know, warm glow of the past. But it's just like,
it's really devastating.
Yeah, it's the reality of that. It doesn't actually compare to the memories that you have of it, which again is so true to life. The whole like, you can't go home again, that whole concept, I think, is what this whole ending is all about.
Yeah, just like separating yourself from nostalgia.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, I feel like, I know this obviously came out in the 80s, but like at that point that it's kind of talking about, where it's like mid-century, wartime, and like things are never going to be the same.
Right.
Like whether you hope for that or not, it's just we're past that point, and like learning to accept that at that time was pretty crucial. So it's interesting to think about like turning points like that in history and how they kind of appear in film.
Yeah. I think that the setting is very important to what this character is experiencing. Yeah, I mean, I think all the stuff with Thelma, Rebecca de Mornay before that, after, you know, she leaves at one point, but I do think their chemistry is sweet. I think that's the most genuine relationship in the film. And I mean, that character has the patience of a saint, because like,
it's too bad they didn't have headphones back then. I'd be like, I know. Oh, nice.
Yeah, right. But it's like, I think she kind of recognizes that this woman probably doesn't have people in her life who really value her very much.
Yeah. Well, she's kind of also speaking to things that I'm sure like that character needs to hear in a way.
Yeah.
Because she's kind of like fighting for her own personal life. So
right.
to see this older woman also kind of doing that, and like that she cherishes a part of her life that woman is now just kind of experiencing for the first time. Yeah. It's also interesting.
Right. I mean, it's a role that is a kind of a gift for her and her talents. I think it's very well suited for her. There's even stuff like at the bus station, I think. I don't know, some sort of rest stop, where she really kind of explodes and has a lot of just chaotic energy. Not going to compare this directly to this performance, but like reminds me a little bit of Jenna Rollins in A Woman Under the Influence, where she's kind of resisting and is like putting up a fight because, you know, her son now knows where she is, and she is just like very resistant because she's so close to Bountiful at that point, and she just won't let it go. And that kind of like obstinate energy, I think it's kind of unpleasant to watch at times, but I appreciate her for going full on with it and just not having any vanity at all. Like there's no movie star kind of.
I feel like there never is with Geraldine Page, which I also kind of admire about her.
Yeah.
Even when they kind of like try and do her up really fancy, it's like you always kind of get a sense that that's not her vibe.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a very well-rounded performance, and she's giving a lot of complexity, even when the film itself is pretty simple at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I'm curious how the play was received.
Yeah, I don't know. Which, like decades ago in the 50s. So, I mean, I think I saw that it only ran for like a month on the stage.
That's so interesting.
But there was a TV production too, so I don't know if that had to do with anything.
Yeah, weird that was like the show, I guess, that they were like, we're gonna make this a movie.
Yeah,
we're gonna make this one a movie, guys.
Yes, several decades later.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there was also another adaptation on the stage with Cicely Tyson in like the early 2010s.
That's right.
Which they also made into a TV movie.
I missed that one.
She got an Emmy nomination for it. Yeah, I haven't seen that either. So anyway, Geraldine,
what a character.
Legend.
Yeah.
I think unless you have anything else on her performance, we can move on to why she won.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. So just to get to some precursors first, Whoopi Goldberg won the Golden Globe for drama over Geraldine. She won the National Board of Review. She was a nominee with the LA Film Critics. She was pretty well covered. And Geraldine Page, another fun trivia fact for you, won the first ever Independent Spirit Award for Best Actress.
Wow.
So how about that? Yeah. And she was a nominee at the Golden Globes, like I said, and New York Film Critics. She won with the Boston Film Critics. So this wasn't just one of those things where like the industry only was, rewarding her. Like critics were actually behind her here. Anne Bancroft was a Golden Globe nominee. Meryl Streep was a Golden Globe nominee. She also won with the LA Film Critics. And Jessica Lange was a nominee with the National Society of Film Critics. So pretty much everyone was on the board, as it were, and kind of in the conversation. And as time went on, I think it sort of narrowed into two possibilities for the win here. So let's talk about it here. Why do we think Geraldine Page finally wins on her 8th nomination? Is it just that, or is it more than that?
I'm sure there are a lot of factors that aren't the fact that it's her 8th, but I do want to say I think that that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think about, like, nobody really is pushing for Jessica Lange here. No one's really pushing for Anne Bancroft here. You might think, like, if Anne Bancroft had not won for The Miracle Worker, like, would this be a different situation? Maybe. You know. But, like, there isn't that question, like, hanging above anybody else. And then Whoopi is, like, a newcomer who is in a film that, like, I guess they felt comfortable shafting entirely. So it's just kind of like, it feels very unavoidable to talk about, like, how Whoopi Goldberg was the first Black nominee in 11 years, is what you said?
Yeah.
And was the only one in that entire decade.
Yep.
Like, it's wild. That disrespect that it requires to, like, even make that situation possible in the first place means to me that, like, there's just no affection or, like, care or empathy toward stories about women like that, or, like, women of color, or, like, any of, like, stories by women of color or anything like that. So it's just kind of like, of course. Yeah, of course. Like, it's sad that it should be, like, unsurprising, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely a resounding feeling from what I read that it was Geraldine Page's time to win after all the work she had put in for decades, not only in film, but on the stage, and was just, like, respected as an acting presence, and is totally dominating her film from start to finish. Again, don't think Bancroft or Lange were really in contention based on what I've read, and also because the performances, I don't think, really were up to those standards. You know, it more or less came down to Geraldine and Whoopi and a little bit Meryl, but not really, just because Out of Africa had a lot of heat going into it. But I think despite Whoopi and Meryl being in Best Picture nominees, and in Meryl's case of being a Best Picture winner, Geraldine is like that great actor's actor who did big parts, small parts, and avoided the stardom aspect of it, like I said before, and just sort of made it all about the work. And she proved that with, like, the trip to Bountiful, that she was still an incredibly effective actress. And for as maybe annoying as her character could be at times, I think it's very easy to sympathize with her. And yeah, let's be honest, let's just, put it right out there. Easier for an older white Academy to identify with Mrs. Watts than it is for Celie.
Yeah. And, like, we've seen hundreds of movies at this point, like Trip to Bountiful. It's like, this is so familiar. It's just such a familiar language for prestige. And, like, not to say that Color Purple isn't either, because I feel like it kind of is, but it just obviously has, like, a different shape, I guess, or like point to it than a lot of other, like, quote unquote prestige films do. It makes me sad, but also it doesn't. I think I would be more comfortable with it if I were, like, really into Geraldine Page, but I'm not. So I feel like I can just be.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think an Academy nowadays might look at this kind of race differently, perhaps. But I think the Academy of 1986, would absolutely be into this kind of performance. It's also very much in line with those sort of lovable mother wins that we got a lot in the early 80s,
Oh my
including
God.
Katharine Hepburn,
Yeah.
Shirley MacLaine, Sally Fields. Like, this is very much in line with that
So
type,
many. Totally.
which just feels, I've been mentioning this a few times with this 80s season. This just feels like such a different Academy and society than the 70s.
Oh, totally.
And what they were rewarding at that time. It feels very much more conservative.
Yeah, there's no experimentation in it whatsoever.
Right. There's not a lot of desire for that either, or
No.
a call for that, because I don't know, like, we just reelected Reagan.
Reagan's
by a
president,
landslide.
baby. We don't want anything new.
Don't need to shake anything up.
Yeah.
So there it is.
That's interesting, though. I mean, I'm interested in what it's like doing these chronologically versus what I do, because I'm sure you like are able to see things that I don't see by jumping around like that. Like, I never thought about that before, how it's all these like lovable moms, but it's so true. There are so many of them.
It's just fascinating, this gradual shift that you see. And like, you could easily, like, if you're in it, I don't know if you could, like, in it at the time, I don't know if you would super notice it, but sort of looking at it just from the trajectory of history is just so fascinating to look at how what kinds of roles are valued in this category completely shift from decade to decade.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Based on society and culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably why I don't connect with the 80s so much.
Yeah. That's fair.
Because it's just kind of like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yes. But I will just say, she did get a standing ovation. And I've been watching quite a few, Best Actress presentations just from doing this show and looking at the reception of everything. I have not seen an ovation like that.
Well,
up
even
to this point.
Yeah, like even what F. Murray Abraham says, like, I don't think he was the only person who thought that.
No.
I think a lot of people really, really loved her as a person and as a performer.
Right.
Like, I think, like, the way it's kind of framed, like, in tandem with what happened with The Color Purple can kind of make it seem like it was a very vindictive or malicious, like, act of, like, anti-Whoopi, voting. Yeah. But I really do, at the end of the day, think it's about how beloved she was. And like, of course, that's connected to how many nominations she had, but it's also just like people had a lot of respect for her.
She had a lot of friends too.
Yeah.
Like, she was very well connected, very, really well respected.
Because she'd been around. She was like in it for 30 years at that point, and like in the biggest studios, biggest vehicles for big players and stuff. So
yeah. And also just worth mentioning is just the mixed reception of The Color Purple, even from predominantly Black organizations. Didn't always love just some of the stereotyping that they felt that the film got into.
Yeah.
And so because of that, there were headlines about The Color Purple. There was also some bitterness that Steven Spielberg was not nominated for director, and some of the cast really had some things to say in the press about that. So I do wonder if part of that negative press maybe affected Whoopi's chances a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. And I feel like the reaction to it is kind of like similarly split too. Because in some sense, like, some people were like, well, I thought it was bad because of XYZ. But also, like, if it had that many nominations and you liked it, is that enough of a reason to have not voted for it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of contradictory as well.
Yeah. It's a delicate conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do definitely kind of think that race was definitely an issue with this, but almost more than anything else, it was just all this respect for Geraldine Page. I did just want to read a quote that she had from the press room that I found very revealing, and I think you may have included it in your video as well. But she said, when it comes to actually getting the little monster, referring to the Oscar, it has to do with a lot of things. This may be because it was 8 times. It may be because it was Kerry Watts and not another role. We don't know what made it slide into my welcoming arms this way, but I know what got me nominated. I did a damn good job.
There you go.
And you know what? I love to see that kind of self-respect.
Truly.
I think more actresses should say that.
I know.
I did a damn good job, and I earned this shit.
Yeah, it's like what did Allison Janney say? She was like,
I did it all myself.
Yeah,
I think that's what she said.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Shirley MacLaine, where she's like, I deserve this.
Right. Yes. I love it. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So shall we get into some Twitter questions?
Sure.
Okay. Dark Shaka said, if Geraldine Page had won before, does she get a second Oscar here, or does one of the other nominees triumph?
Ooh. I mean, I'll take a gamble. I'll say one of the others. Why not?
Yeah. I don't think she gets this one. I think it's a big part of it is her, finally getting it this time.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Kaplan said, when Glenn Close wins the Oscar for Sunset Boulevard, would you support having F. Marie Abraham back as a presenter so he can call her the best actress in the English language? Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Do they have a good relationship? If they do, then
I don't even know if they've ever met. Okay. Ray Lopez says, this is Geraldine's last nomination. What's your ranking? Okay, I'll do my quick ranking here of her 8 nominated performances.
Oh my gosh.
Number 1, Interiors. Number 2, The Trip to Bountiful. Number 3, Sweet Bird of Youth. Number 4, The Pope of Greenwich Village. Number 5, Hondo. Number 6, Summer and Smoke.
Oh.
Number 7, Pete and Tilly. And number 8, You're a Big Boy Now.
I haven't seen You're a Big Boy Now.
It's not great, Bob.
Yeah, don't get that impression. I would say mine's really similar. I would probably put Sweet Bird of Youth a little higher.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Which Summer and Smoke, sorry, is what I meant.
Yeah.
Would be a little bit higher for me. Probably before Pope of Greenwich Village.
Okay. Fair enough.
But otherwise, yeah, pretty similar. A lot of those I have almost no memory of seeing.
Yeah, some of these are a little forgettable.
I think Interiors is her best.
Yeah, I'm glad we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Matt Stillman said, if Geraldine Page must have an Oscar, what should it have been for? Interiors personally, but also I think Jill Clayburgh is my preferred pick for an unmarried woman that year. So that's tough to say.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing that I don't think we talked about that much is she got really unlucky with who she was nominated against for almost all of her nominations.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of them are ones where it's sort of nobody else was winning, unfortunately. Or there was 2 really, really good candidates or something. So it's kind of hard to say, but I really like her in Interiors, but I also prefer, that's another one of those years where there's 3 or 4 who are just incredible.
Ingrid Bergman and Autumn Sonata.
Come on.
How do you compete with that?
Exactly. Yeah. So tough. That's tough.
Mm-hmm. Christoph said, the early 80s have 3 Best Actress wins that are often referred to as sentimental choices and or career wins. Katharine Hepburn, Shirley MacLaine, Geraldine Page. Rank them from most obvious career win to least obvious career win, and from most deserved to least deserved. I would say most obvious career win is Katharine Hepburn. I don't know if you would agree on that.
Well, I would say this one, because she already had 3.
That's true. I just feel like, is the 4th one necessary for Katharine? I don't know. It feels like this might be your last performance. We're going to give you one last one. That's kind of how that win feels to me. Personally.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But yeah, I think her and Geraldine Page for me are in the same conversation.
Yeah, because also I think that was probably also more the case with Henry Fonda.
Yeah,
because
certainly.
He also didn't. I don't think he had one at that point.
No.
So there was certainly an air around that movie of oh, they're dying and we need to give them something. But it's kind of you didn't really have to give it to Katharine Hepburn, I guess.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then least obvious, I would say, is Shirley MacLaine. Just the fact that film is also winning Best Picture. And I think, maybe this is a hot take, I think she would have won regardless of whether or not she had won before. I just think
that to me is genuinely the best of the 3 we've discussed.
Exactly.
In more ways than one.
Yeah. So I think I would personally, if the question is most to least deserved also of our own preferences, I would go Shirley and then Geraldine Page and then Katharine Hepburn for me.
Yeah. I think I would do Shirley, Katharine, Geraldine.
Yeah.
I just like that movie a little bit better. So
yeah. I definitely prefer On Golden Pond, to be clear.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, it's an actual movie. Christian Bonamusa has a philosophical question for us. Where is your Bountiful?
Oh my God.
Where's your Bountiful, Izzy?
Wherever my cat is.
Oh.
I don't really feel like that connected to a place, to be honest. But I feel most happy and comfortable when I'm just like, when my cat is sleeping on me.
That's
so that's
nice.
what I would pick.
I like that. Yeah. I'm going to take a different interpretation of it and say I haven't been to this place, but like maybe it doesn't exist. I'm going to say the Academy room where they keep all the records.
Oh.
That's my Bountiful. That's something that I don't know if
what
it
kind of
exists, but I want
records?
to go there. Like vote totals.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, so in like a Price Waterhouse Cooper, like
Yes.
basement.
I want to go to that place.
Are those, I don't actually know. Are those like people's names are on them, or is it all just anonymous?
I think it's anonymous. I just want to see like who the runner-up was.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
For my own purposes.
You could just like hack into something. I'm sure they've tallied it that way at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. So just saying, that'll be my trip. That'll be my cross-country trip on a bus.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really good one. I really like that answer.
Thank you. This is from Christoph, who said, rule number 2 in my upcoming book, The Etiquette of Presenting an Award, will be nobody is interested in what you personally think about the winner. Your only job is to read out the name. Do you agree? So this is some F. Marie Abraham shit.
No, I don't agree, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a lovely touch from him. I mean, I'm sure like people probably would have been annoyed on like had Twitter existed or something.
Yes.
But if you have like a personal relationship with somebody, like let's say you were co-stars at one point or whatever, like it'd be nice to be like, yay, it's you know, I like to see a little humanity from people in these situations. Yeah,
I understand the sentiment from Christoph here.
Sure.
I think it's fine in some cases, like you said, personal connection, like, you know, Penelope Cruz being like Pedro when he won for All About My Mother, like that's just a nice moment. So I think it's okay as long as you don't.
No one needs a monologue.
Right, exactly. Just a nice personal comment. It's fine. Yeah.
Yep.
Fritz said, you are allowed to go back in time and present one Best Actress Oscar by declaring the winner the greatest actress in the English language. Which winner do you pick?
The greatest actress in the English language?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I mean, that's really hard. Because it's changed so much, like what the definition of that is. So this is like people who have already won? Or it's like...
The Best Actress Oscar, particularly. Yeah. Like, if you were presenting one of those Oscars to any of those ladies, when would you say that?
Do you know, like, off the top of your head?
I mean, I was just going to say Meryl for, like, the Iron Lady, even though I don't like that performance. Just, like, in general, many people would agree she's, like, the greatest. So, that makes sense. Honestly, I might do Cate Blanchett for Blue Jasmine.
Yeah, well. It's like I might do Kate, but maybe, you know what, since we've been praising Anne for so long, maybe I'll do Anne in The Miracle Worker.
Wow, I like that.
And I like that she can do both. She can do a lot. She's really versatile.
That's true. And I love that answer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then Joan Crawford can then accept that award.
She would come up and accept it from me. Exactly.
Right. Yes. What a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, speaking of Anne, Kareem Balak said, why do you think the Academy went with Bancroft in Best Actress over Fonda, who clearly is the lead, with Bancroft actually being supporting?
We kind of talked about this a little bit.
Yeah. I just think she kind of has the showier part compared to Jane, who I think is very good, but like it's not some big like transformational character work necessarily. No offense on Jane's part.
I think that's
what do you think?
Fair. And I also think this is like kind of a weird moment for Jane Fonda because it's kind of like she's tapering off a little bit. Yeah. In popularity at this point.
She's workout queen Jane Fonda right now.
Yeah, exactly. So like Anne Bancroft here is kind of like, oh, like a late career role like for you. That's so nice. Like a very nice dramatic role for you. So I feel like that's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah. Fritz said Anne and Geraldine were nominated together 2 times. Recast Geraldine in one of Anne's nominated roles and vice versa. I mean, I think just like she did on the stage, Agnes of God would be perfect for Geraldine, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I could see her in Pumpkin Eaters too.
I like that. Yeah. And then for Anne in one of Geraldine's roles.
Wow.
Sweet Bird
She
of
could
Youth?
have done, yeah, she could do like really
know.
any of the Tennessee Williams ones, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
That's interesting. I never thought of them as like interchangeable, which I don't think they necessarily are, but maybe like there's a bigger Venn diagram centerpiece than I would have expected.
Let's see. Rob Montoya said Geraldine Page originated the role of Mother Miriam Ruth in the Broadway production of Agnes of God. If she was cast in the film adaptation as opposed to Anne Bancroft, would she still have won?
Wow.
My hot take is no.
Really? Why is that?
I don't think the role is quite substantial enough for Best Actress.
Right.
Perhaps.
It's giving interiors.
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But maybe she could have swooped in for supporting or something. Because I think the priority here is to get her one. I don't think anyone would have cared if it was supporting, you know, least of all her.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Who knows?
Interesting.
It's tough to say.
Maybe she would have been 0 for 8.
Oh, God.
I don't know.
Tough.
Anyway, Christoph said, does Anne Bancroft really belong in lead? And does Meg Tilly really belong in supporting? Which category would have been the correct one for Jane Fonda? Well, obviously, Fonda should be in lead of the 3.
Totally.
I don't know. I said earlier I think that they should switch, but I am willing to be convinced if you think that everything worked out correctly.
I'm not sure that it necessarily worked out correctly, but I also don't think there's a correct answer. You know what I mean? Like, I could see an argument for it going any number of ways, but I guess my personal opinion would be that Anne and Meg would be supporting and Jane would be lead.
That would work. Yeah, very the favorite.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew Carden said, what would have been the consequence of Bancroft going supporting? Who takes her slot in lead? Who does she boot from the supporting lineup? And could she have won in supporting? I think Cher takes her spot. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like what everybody thought was going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's...
And Cher probably thought that too.
Yeah, she sure did. I don't even remember who was nominated for supporting that year.
Yeah, I can run through it real quick.
Sure.
We had Angelica Houston for Prizzi's Honor was the winner. Oprah Winfrey and Margaret Avery for The Color Purple. Amy Madigan for Twice in a Lifetime. Haven't seen it.
Me neither.
And who else?
And Meg Tilly.
Meg Tilly. Sorry. Wow. We just talked about her. And Meg Tilly for Agnes of God. Yeah. I would guess either Amy Madigan or Margaret Avery she would replace, because Margaret Avery did not get a single precursor nomination whatsoever for The Color Purple. She just kind of swooped in at the last minute. So one of those two.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. I don't actually know this for sure, but I feel like you would know this. Did Oprah have any like actual traction for that award, or was it just sort of like, it's Oprah?
I don't.
She wasn't exactly
that fully.
She wasn't like Oprah yet.
No, she was not. She was relatively considered unknown at this time, actually. So I think she certainly was out there on the campaign trail and was probably the alternative to Angelica Houston would be my guess, but I haven't super looked into it.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, Meg Tilly won the Golden Globe, so she was the alternative.
Here's a question. So if it's Geraldine Page and supporting...
Okay.
Since we're like recasting and like hypothetical doing all of this.
Yes.
It's Geraldine Page and Agnes of God versus Angelica Houston and Prizzi's Honor. Who do you think wins?
Oh, Jesus. I would guess Angelica still, but
who knows?
Who's to say?
Yeah.
Everything worked out just fine, I think, in the end.
It's true.
But I also don't think Anne Bancroft would have won in supporting if she was there, to be honest. She's already
I don't think so either.
Of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think so either.
Okay, Lila and Joey Gentili want me to rank Anne Bancroft's 5 Oscar nominations. So I would say Miracle Worker #1 for me, then The Pumpkin Eater, and then The Graduate, all 3 great. 4 Agnes of God, and then 5 The Turning Point. That would be mine.
You're not a Turning Point fan, huh?
I think it's fine. I don't know. Are you a fan?
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna switch Turning Point and Agnes of God, I think.
Okay.
Because I think Pumpkin Eater is completely underrated. I think like The Graduate is obviously a better film than either Miracle Worker and Pumpkin Eater, in my opinion. But her role is like pretty small, so I can't really put it up there to me.
So, in other words, you would rank her nominations best first, worst last, in just like that descending order.
Yeah. So it's like,
So what you're saying is she gets worse with each nomination. Got it.
Oh my God, maybe I am saying that.
No, all these nominations are earned, I think. So,
yeah. But fine. I do think like The Graduate, the only reason that it's in third for me is because it's so small. I think it's like qualitatively just as good as the first 2 in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all kind of in the same tier. S tier.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to a few Whoopi questions. Stalker Channing Tatum O'Neill said, Whoopi is hers the best motion picture debut of all time.
Ooh.
I think she's in the conversation for that.
Sure.
Personally.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Barbara.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who are always in the conversation, but that's definitely one of, like, Audrey Hepburn. I could see her, like, on a list somewhere, you know? I don't know if I'd take the plunge and say best, but...
And Jamie also asks, where do you rank Whoopi against the other actresses nominated for their film debut? I would put her right above Barbara, honestly.
Ooh.
Of those who were nominated, I think so, personally.
Well, here's what I probably wouldn't do that, but I will give her this, which is that like Barbara had been doing Funny Girl forever.
Yes.
Like she came into that film knowing exactly what she needed and had to do. And like, that's a completely different situation than what Whoopi was going through. So like Whoopi had a much harder task than Barbara did.
Yeah, you just made my argument for me.
There you go. Yeah.
So thank you. Christoph said, was this category the best shot The Color Purple had at an Oscar win? Maybe. I also think like original song, you know, costume design, like there's plenty that it could have been second place in. Totally. Maybe even supporting actress for Oprah, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I
do think it was one of the...
Go ahead. Sorry. I interrupted you.
I think it was one of those films where it was probably runner-up in like a lot of categories. It just couldn't get over the finish line to get one, which makes it glaring that it didn't win any, but there very well could have been like a lot of support for the movie that just didn't show up in the wins.
Yeah, I think like it is the one that I wish, if they had to have won, that's the one that I wish they would have won.
Yeah. Eric Maxwell Bruns asked if Whoopi losing is one of the worst looks for the Academy. And then Chelsea noted that the movie was robbed across the board. And just what are your top instances where you think the Academy really fumbled something special? Well, there's a few of those. Oh,
gosh, yeah.
Obviously, Best Picture for Moonlight, La La Land is the ultimate fumble.
That's a producing fumble, though.
Fair.
The voting body, in my opinion, did not get that right. Wait, who actually won Moonlight? Now I'm like confused.
That was Moonlight.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they got that right.
This is the problem. It was such a fumble that some people don't even remember which one won.
That's true. So that's true. But thank God the voting body came through. But I do think it really dropped the ball on that one. I mean, like there are a bunch of famous ones that look really bad in hindsight. Obviously, like the Judy Grace one, which has its some people think Grace Kelly like should have won that, and I don't agree, but
they do.
Sure,
they're out there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there are some Geraldine stans who are listening to this who are just like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, I know a few. I do know a few. For me, a fumble, personally speaking,
Mm.
is the continued disrespect to Glenn Close.
Oh yeah. So is the wife is a fumble to you?
Not qualitatively.
Yeah.
I think like Dangerous Liaisons, I think, is the biggest fumble that they didn't give it to her for that. When Jodie Foster was always going to win in a few years for Silence of the Lambs, they couldn't have known that. But
Yeah.
just looking back, I think you just kind of want to rewrite history a little there, and we wouldn't be in the place we are now where we're wondering, is she ever going to win?
Yeah.
So that's my fumble.
I think that's great. And I'm holding out hope that like she has a good role coming, that she's gonna do it finally.
Yeah, I hope so. Let's see. Jeffrey Kerr said Celie in The Color Purple went on to win Tonys for LaChanze and Cynthia Erivo. How egregious does that make Whoopi's loss at the Oscars look in retrospect? I mean, I think it's a pretty egregious loss in general, regardless of that. Obviously, this and the musical are two different things, so I wouldn't think it's like a direct one-to-one, but yeah, it feels like one of those roles, like a Queen Elizabeth, where it's like almost designed to win awards on top of everything else.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect how I think about the movie awards situation at all.
This was a fun one I actually got on Instagram from Humphrey Fogart. Great name. If Whoopi Goldberg had won, would she still go on to win for my favorite supporting actress performance of all time in Ghost?
I doubt it. In my opinion, because that is such a weird acting win, like outside of that context to me. So I don't know that they would be as willing to maybe make that kind of categorical leap if it hadn't been Whoopi.
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough. Yeah, I think she could still do it, but we also have the fact that no Black actress has ever won multiple Oscars.
Yeah. That's true.
So there is a bit of a pattern here that is disturbing.
Yep.
Brad Pritt asked like basically the same question of what would have happened if she had won for Ghost, and maybe could like Lorraine Bracco win for Goodfellas. I don't know about Lorraine Bracco necessarily winning. Would have loved to see Diane Ladd win for Wild at Heart. I'll just throw that out there. That would have been
I'm down with that.
The most wild win of all time.
For sure.
So, I feel she still would have been nominated for Ghost, would be my guess. Mm-hmm. But the win discussion might be different. Mm-hmm. And this is from the ghost of Glenda Miss Jackson If You Nasty, who said, will Fantasia avenge Whoopi this year in the movie musical version of The Color Purple?
Hard to say. I don't think anyone's seen it.
That's the issue. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely going to date this episode.
That's true.
Like in place, but I'm going to say no for now because it's shaping up to be a very strong field from what I'm seeing. Yeah. Like there's already camps of Lily Gladstone and Emma Stone. Sandra Hüller. Yep.
Yeah, it's like from what I understand and from what I've seen. Oh, and like Kaylee Spaney. I feel like it's gonna be tight, like a tight category this year. Like elbows out, fight for it. So I would be
gonna be a fun episode down the line
because she played it on Broadway as well, correct? She was in the original cast, so I feel like I'm excited to see her performance captured on film.
Me too.
I was surprised that it wasn't Cynthia Erivo though.
Yeah, I think what happened there is she decided to do Wicked.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that choice bears out next year.
I'm sure it will be a monetarily very good decision.
That's a very good point, honestly. Christoph said, Jessica Lange received her Oscar nomination for playing a country music singer between her nomination for country and her nomination for music. Box. Do you find that pleasing, or is that only me?
That is pleasing.
Yes. If you do find that pleasing, if you're listening, you've come to the right place. Yeah. And Christoph also said Beverly D'Angelo received some awards traction for playing Patsy Cline in Coal Miner's Daughter. Should she have reprised the role for Sweet Dreams instead of Jessica Lange?
Like a Marvel Cinematic Universe of
absolutely
country singers. I'd love to see it. Why not?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think Beverly D'Angelo deserved more leading roles.
Yeah.
Rather than having to play Chevy Chase's wife. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Let's do it. I think
she's fine in those movies, but she's capable of more. Okay. Amar said, is Jessica Lange in Sweet Dreams the first Best Actress nominee who died in a dramatic plane crash? Yeah, I think so.
Wait. Repeat that question.
Is Jessica Lange in Sweet Dreams the first Best Actress nominee who died in a dramatic plane crash?
Oh, I mean, is it bad that my head went to Carol Lombard? Because I thought it meant like literally for a second.
Oh, no.
I was like, what?
In real life, she is the first Best Actress nominee in general, not in her film necessarily. But wow. Yeah.
Wow. I guess so.
Probably. Yeah, from what I can remember.
Yeah.
It's not the first plane crash featured in a Best Actress nominee. Susan Hayward in With a Song in My Heart was in a plane crash, but she did not die from it. So
right,
that's the distinction.
If only.
Anyway, speaking of which,
I'm just kidding.
I guess. Ayrton O'Brien said Susan Hayward and Jessica Lange in a lip sync for your life. Who shantays, who sachets, or is it a double elimination?
Oh God. Well, I think I literally said this earlier that she wasn't as bad as Susan Hayward. Susan Hayward was like my benchmark.
You did.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess Jessica's staying with us. Although
yeah,
who knows? Could be a double elimination.
Yeah. There are better examples of lip syncing on film
for sure
in general, but it's just between the two of them, it's Jessica for me. Fritz said Meryl really wanted to play Patsy Cline, as we discussed. Mm-hmm. How would she have been? Probably very committed. I do wonder if she would have done her own singing, though. I wonder, because she does love to sing.
She sure does.
In her films. I
can't imagine, honestly, that I would be like that enthusiastic about it. But more so, like, okay, that's like my indictment of the film rather than of Meryl. Do you know what I mean? I think Out of Africa is a better movie than Sweet Dreams. So I feel like she kind of made a good decision.
Yeah. Joey Gentili said Sweet Dreams was one of only 3 roles Meryl was turned down for. Jessica Lange obviously taking the role quick. Cast Jessica in another role that she should have played over Meryl.
Ooh.
We're taking a Meryl Streep role and putting in Jessica Lange instead.
Okay, I'm casting Meryl Streep.
I have an answer for this.
No, go for it.
No, you're casting Jessica Lange
in a Meryl Streep role.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I would say August Osage County. I think Jessica would have been better than Meryl.
And also that fits with her whole I'm obsessed with small town rural people.
Yes,
thing.
Exactly.
I think that what would I love to see her in? There's so many that I think she would be good in, but it's just a question of whether or not they're interchangeable or like she would be better, you know? I'm going to say this might be a sin. People might not like this. I'm going to say Bridges of Madison County.
Oh, damn.
Is that rude?
I just think that's one of Meryl's best, personally. But I do see where you're going with it.
Speaking of putting her on a farm, I do think like Meryl is really, really good in that movie, but I also would want to see how Jessica Lange does it because I just think of Jessica Lange as more sexual than Meryl. And I think this role is good because it lets Meryl be sexual. But it would also be interesting to see how someone who does that more often would approach it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Fritz said, this is the 3rd time Meryl appears in a Best Picture winner. Which of the 3 movies and performances is your favorite? Well, this one is last in both of those cases. Sorry to Out of Africa. I would say Kramer versus Kramer is my favorite of her performances of that and The Deer Hunter and Out of Africa, but I think I prefer The Deer Hunter among the 3.
Yeah, I would say Kramer, Deer Hunter, Out of Africa for sure.
Yeah.
I still think her performance in Kramer versus Kramer is like one of my top 5 of hers.
Yeah.
Easily.
It's my number 1 as of
Oh,
now.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Miles McHale said, Bountiful and Agnes started as plays. Purple and Sweet Dreams have been adapted into musicals. Where is the stage adaptation of Out of Africa?
Oh my God. I hope it never happens.
I think it would be pretty boring. Especially if you don't have like those grand vistas and everything to work with.
Exactly. That's like Julie Taymor does Out of Africa.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I would actually be interested in that interpretation, to be fair. But yeah, I see your point.
Yeah.
Christian Bonamusa said, which movie star is washing your hair in the jungle? Dream on.
Ooh. Oh my God. That's like a really
me.
intimate question.
Yes.
Do you
you don't have
one?
to answer if you're uncomfortable with it. I think someone who would be very like, I'm just thinking of movie stars of 2023, someone who would be very like very gentle and relaxing to me would be like a Ryan Gosling.
Okay, sure. I'm trying to get like, what am I getting out of this? Is this like a sexual experience, or is this like, who do I think would actually be best at washing my hair?
Why
Do you know
not
what I mean? Wow, great question. I'm gonna say I feel like I'm like disrespecting everybody that I'm thinking about, like wash my hair. Since you said Ryan Gosling, I'll say Margot Robbie, because
Perfect.
I feel like she'd be fun to hang out with and she would also do a good job.
Yeah, that's true. I'd like to see both of them doing
Sure.
it.
Yeah. We can just like
Yeah.
all hang out and wash our hair.
I love that. Love that for us.
Oh God.
This is a wild question from Celluloid Siren, who said, Meryl was nominated for playing one of the most famous Danish literary icons. Can you rank her and all the other actresses nominated in this category for playing real-life authors or poets from best to worst? I'm not going to rank these because there are several here and it would take too long. But they list Norma Shearer and the Barretts of Wimpole Street.
Last place.
Well, there you have it. Rosalind Russell in My Sister Eileen, Olivia de Havilland in The Snake Pit, Jennifer Jones in Love is a Many Splendored Thing, last for me, Deborah Carr for The King and I, Carrie Snodgrass in Diary of a Mad Housewife, Jane Fonda in Julia, Streep again in Postcards from the Edge, Deborah Winger in Shadowlands, Miranda Richardson in Tom and Viv, Judi Dench in Iris, Nicole Kidman in The Hours, Reese Witherspoon in Wild, and Melissa McCarthy in Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Oh,
that's like 14.
Yeah, I don't know how to
I'm not
rank
going to
that.
rank all of those. But where would you generally put Meryl among that group of, I don't know if it's performances
for Out of
or
Africa?
Like, yeah.
Like,
I mean, she doesn't even really do a lot of like writing in the movie, so I don't know if it really even applies, but
I like
I
bottom mid table.
Yeah, I would agree. Pretty low.
Yeah,
for me.
I will say like a couple of standouts from that, or just some that I want to point out. Like Melissa McCarthy's performance in Can You Ever Forgive Me is so underrated.
It's so good.
Yeah,
and that's one of the best writer portrayals I think ever.
Yeah, it's really good. I wish she would have gotten more attention for that.
Yeah.
It's also hard to like Deborah Carr in The King and I don't know. Maybe a little bit of a stretch to put her in that.
Yeah, this is true. Okay, well, we always love recasting among these questions, so here we go. Rob Montoya said, fast forward to 2023 and all 5 of these films are remade. Who would you cast in each of these nominated performances?
Frances McDormand has to be an Agnes of God.
Well, yes. I like that. That's an excellent pick. I was going to say like a Viola Davis would be fun to see in that kind of a role.
Yeah. Her second, well, I guess both of their second Nun movies, lest we forget the famous Madeline.
Yes, fair. Is it cheating to just say Fantasia for The Color Purple or Cynthia Erivo? I mean, that's like,
I guess
right there.
Yeah, like it kind of is cheating, but like in a good way. Like it's natural picks.
Also, Megan Hilty played Patsy Cline in a Lifetime movie called Patsy and Loretta.
Megan Hilty.
I say she should play her again. Why not?
As long as it's not Jessica Chastain, because she just can't keep doing country women. Not because I don't think she could do it, but it's just like we can't collect them like Thanos or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
I think, who I think would be really good at that? Annaleigh Ashford.
Oh, wow. Actually, that might be the one. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then for Out of Africa, I mean, it could be
literally anyone. Yeah.
For some reason, I landed on Natalie Portman. I don't even know if she would be good at it, but like, I could see her doing something like that.
I could see Vicky Creeps do it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That would work.
Because I'd probably want like a European.
Yeah. That's true. Good point.
Yeah.
And then for the trip to Bountiful, I'm just going to say someone who was in this lineup with Geraldine, and that's Jessica Lange now.
Ooh. Yeah. That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Who's like our resident Southerner? Who kind of like, I feel like there's always one. I don't know. Maybe Sally Field.
That makes sense. Yeah.
She's not Southern.
Sissy Spacek.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, ooh.
Yeah.
See, I knew. I was like, I'm missing one. There's always one.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is another wild one from Christopher Perkins. Assign these roles, with the exception of Whoopi's, as Halloween costumes for current co-hosts on an episode of The View.
That's so funny. I mean, Joy has to be Agnes of God because
that's 100%.
Yeah. Whoever the Republican is can be Out of Africa because it's colonizer behavior. I was going to say the same exact thing. Yep.
Alyssa Farah Griffin is the Republican these days that they have. Anna Navarro I could see as Patsy Cline,
Definitely. And then
although
I guess Sarah Haynes feels like very like she would enjoy that.
That's fair. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Very safe costume. That's just kind of like a little like a beehive wig, beehive wig, and a dress.
Yeah. Wow. You dragged Sarah.
No offense, Sarah. I've been at The View twice. I can say this.
Okay. So are we putting Anna Navarro in the trip to Bountiful here?
Oh, God. She would hate that, too. She would hate that so much.
Yeah.
Wow. Sucks for her.
What we're left with. Yeah.
To be fair, I think all of them would hate dressing up as an old person.
Yeah. Maybe Barbara Walters would have done it. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Jimmy and John T want us to talk about Kathleen Turner and why she was not nominated for Prizzi's Honor, despite the fact that most of her co-stars were nominated. It was nominated for Best Picture, and she won a Golden Globe. What happened?
What happened indeed? Do you have any thoughts?
I don't know. I think this is even more confounding for me than like the previous year for Romancing the Stone, where we also talked about that. This is also like a very serious lineup for me. And like her performance doesn't fit the vibe of the rest of these to me.
I feel like she always had trouble with the Academy, though.
Yeah, she was only nominated once for Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yeah. I think it's kind of perennial like femme fatale problem.
Yeah.
Like if she had her exact same career in the 1940s, she would not have been nominated either.
Yeah, that's a solid point. Yeah. Starting out with Body Heat, I think maybe was on the wrong foot for some, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah. Because they're wrong.
Yeah. Loud and wrong. Speaking of which, a little bit, Tony Cunett said, why do you think none of the Golden Globe comedy musical nominees secured a nomination here? So as a reminder, I had to write these down because I did not know what they were. We had Kathleen Turner, and we had Rosanna Arquette for Desperately Seeking Susan. Glenn Close in Maxie, which is a wild one, trust me. Mia Farrow in The Purple Rose of Cairo, and Sally Field in Murphy's Romance.
Wow. I mean, the one that actually surprises me is Mia Farrow.
Yeah, for sure.
The rest of them, I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. because she got some traction for that. She was also, I think, nominated for a BAFTA, and she just had a lot of great notices for that movie. And
It's
I think
Woody Allen in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah. But they just had a weird hang up with Mia Farrow that I don't quite understand.
Yeah, wow. I don't know. That's really interesting. I don't know.
Christoph said, you already tackled this year multiple times for your series A Woman Robbed. Yes, I did. And I talked about Cher and Mia Farrow, actually. So there you go.
There you go.
But didn't even cover Norma Alejandro yet. How did, in such a contentious year, lackluster contenders like Streep and Lange prevail over much better performances by Cher, Farrow, and Alejandro? So that's Norma Alejandro for The Official Story, which is our foreign language winner of the year.
I haven't seen that film, but I mean, I feel like there's fairly obvious like political answers to that question.
Yeah. And also Streep and Lange, if we're going to single them out, like they are the reigning 80s queens at this time. Streep is in Lange is in a biopic. Streep is in the Best Picture winner. Both very friendly to the Academy. If anyone like took a spot, it would probably be Anne Bancroft. That would be my guess. Not like in terms of quality, but just in the rankings of everything. Yeah. It's just foreign language performances have forever struggled to get nominated in multiple categories. For some reason, the 80s especially was like a very bleak time compared to the 70s. So,
yeah, the famously liberal and open-armed 1980s in the United States.
Yes, very indicative of the culture. Okay, 3 more here. So this is from Seamus, who said, other than Cher, Jane Fonda, and Kathleen Turner, who else was a snub this year? See all the things we just said, but especially Mia Farrow for me.
Yeah, for sure. I actually do like that movie. I like Purple Rose of Cairo.
Me too.
I didn't remember until just now that Clue came out that year.
Oh.
Throw any one of them into supporting.
Yes. Madeline Kahn. Yeah.
Why not?
Let's see. Joey Gentili said, recast these 80s Oscar talents and Karen Black in the roles above.
And Karen Black.
Yes, he's a big Karen Black super fan, so he always has to throw her in there.
I just think like saying "and Karen Black" is like the way to phrase it is really funny. Anyway,
it's great. So Karen Black, Alfre Woodard, Margaret Avery, Peggy Ashcroft, Jodie Foster. I think a gimme is Peggy Ashcroft in The Trip to Bountiful, first of all.
I mean, I think Alfre Woodard is also kind of a gimme.
In The Color Purple.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other ones are a little trickier. I would say maybe
Margaret
Avery.
Sorry.
Margaret Avery and Agnes of God, perhaps. The others are Jodie Foster and, of course, Karen Black, who I think Karen Black would be great in Sweet Dreams, would be my guess.
Oh, God. Yeah, she would be so good.
Yeah. Maybe even better than Jessica. And I guess we're left with Jodie Foster and Out of Africa, which sucks for her, but...
Sure. I'd buy her more as a writer, though, I think.
That's true. Yeah. She was very young at this time, but if we're saying time doesn't matter, then...
It's funny because Karen Black could also be really good in Agnes of God.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do want her to sing.
Yes. Okay, last one. We're ending on a fun one here from Jeremy Kaplan, who said, 1985 marks the TV premiere of The Golden Girls. Cast the 5 nominated actresses in the roles of Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, Sophia, and Dorothy's ex-husband, Stan.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So I came up with a good combination here that I'm pretty happy with.
Okay.
But
do you want to go first, or do you want me to like take a stab?
You could take a stab. I don't want you to be influenced by mine.
I think Whoopi is either Dorothy or Sophia.
That's not what I had.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no. I think I'm gonna say Meryl's Rose.
I also have Meryl as Rose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jessica Lange as
That has to be Blanche, right?
it has to be Lange.
Yeah, it's right there.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put Whoopi as Dorothy, and then Anne Bancroft as Sophia.
Who's Stan?
And then I guess Geraldine Page is Stan.
Oh, Geraldine.
I'm sorry, Geraldine.
So what I came up with is Jessica as Blanche. That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
I did Geraldine Page as Sophia.
Okay. No, that's a good one. Yeah.
She's very
for sure.
sweet and different things in the trip to Bountiful, but I think she's very capable of being like that sharp-tongued kind of acidic thing.
Yes.
So I landed on Anne Bancroft as Dorothy.
I think I could go. Yeah.
Which could work.
Yeah.
And Meryl as Rose and Whoopi as Stan.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
I think both of those are great.
Yeah.
I would watch either of those shows.
Me too. I wish that we could have had like a live staging of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get to our final segment where we will reveal who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. I feel like this is maybe one of our easier ones, but
a real
we'll see.
Nail biter.
Yes. What's Izzy gonna say? Who do you think it was?
Well, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg for The Color Purple.
Wow.
Shocking.
Hot take. Go on.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of this episode has been me explaining
Yeah, that's true.
why I think that. So, see everything I've just said.
Yes. See previous comments. I
Yes.
completely agree. I would say if there was an alternative, it would be Meryl because of the Best Picture win for Out of Africa, but I don't really think that there was urgency to give her another Oscar for this, per se.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just think Whoopi has such an incredible transformation through all of those decades and is such like a great narrative as the discovery, which the Academy does tend to like those kinds of narrative, especially in Best Actress. So, you know, I do wonder how close she was. Geraldine probably ran away with it in the end, but I do think Whoopi did contend pretty strongly. And so, yeah, the final question I have for you is another probably obvious one, but who would you have voted for from this lineup?
Oh, I would have voted for Whoopi for sure. I'm not fumbling it like the Academy did. Let's just say that.
It's true. We're both different. Yes. I also would have voted for Whoopi. It's an astonishing performance. She is so empathetic and open and raw, and you're just with her every step of her journey. And it's just one of those performances that has lasted for decades now with me. And again, it's like even if she didn't win an Oscar for it, it will probably live on the most of these 5 performances and represent something greater.
Yes. The only thing that makes me like a little sad in hindsight is knowing that Geraldine Page died like literally right after this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I am pretty happy that she, had this moment.
That's fair. And again, Whoopi would win an Oscar for Ghost. So like everyone here is taken care of. But
it did work out. But I think putting myself in the shoes of a 1985 voter, that's what I would have done.
Yes. Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Izzy, for another very fun episode. I always love talking with you about actresses of yesteryear and today, even. Most of these people are still working. So, but anyway, yes, thanks so much.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. As you know, I'm obsessed with your work. So it's such a pleasure for me as well.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, tell people where they could find more of you on the internet.
You can find me on YouTube at Be Kind Rewind, and I think it's just youtube.com/BK Rewind. And then what else? Twitter at BK Rewind, I guess, or X, whatever it is. And then Instagram BK_Rewind.
And also the podcast, right?
Yes, Izzy and Murtada Picture Show. Listen to us. We talk about, if you haven't heard of it, We talk about like a lot of new releases, and we interview a lot of authors who've written books about films, and just like hot topics in the movie conversation. So you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, and on like all social media at I Am Picture Show.
Very good. Highly recommend. Whenever I listen to your show, it just feels like hanging out with two friends, except I can't respond.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. You could find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson, and the show's at Oscar Runner Up. Instagram at And the Runner Up is. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you heard and want to hear more, go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup is, where you can hear a whole bunch of bonus episodes. And next week, we'll be discussing the Best Actress lineup of 1986, where the nominees were Jane Fonda in The Morning After, Marlee Matlin in Children of a Lesser God, Sissy Spacek in Crimes of the Heart, Kathleen Turner in Peggy Sue Got Married, and Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, with the winner being Marlee Matlin. Gonna be a fun one. So with that, thanks again, Izzy.
Thank you.
And I will bid you all adieu.